Chapter 424. Father, I'm going on a mission. In front of the Woodleaf's memorial tablet, Asuma's hand slowly stroked the place where his father's name was engraved, then he put a bouquet of flowers in his hand on the ground. This bouquet of flowers was specially picked by Asuma after asking his disciple, Ino Yamanaka, who runs a flower shop. This bouquet of flowers looks a bit ordinary, even a bit like weeds growing on the side of the road. However, the dark green leaves seem to be full of vitality against the pale yellow petals. This bouquet of flowers is called Ting. Ino said that this bouquet of flowers is used to dedicate to brave martyrs. It is the most suitable flower to represent destruction and hope. My father, the 3 generations of Woodleaf Hokage, aren't they the martyrs for my own hopes and ideals? I finally continue my bloodline, and let the Yuan Fei clan have a successor. Isn't it also the most suitable gift for martyrs? In the beginning, I complained again and again that you weren't a qualified father, because you dedicated most of your life to Woodleaf village. For Woodleaf, how much has our clan sacrificed? My elder brother, my mother, and you. But when I learned that I have a child, I suddenly understood why you can sacrifice your life for Woodleaf without hesitation. Not only because you are Woodleaf ninja, but also because our home is in Woodleaf. Our sacrifice is actually just to protect our home. From his arms, Asuma skillfully took out his cigarette box. Just as he took out a cigarette from it, the corner of his mouth slowly raised. With a bit of a bitter smile and joy, he looked at the memorial tablet as if he was talking to his father. You and I are the same, we can't live without cigarettes, but now for my child, I actually subconsciously began to refuse to smoke. In the beginning, did you also forcibly resist the urge to smoke, just to see me and my elder brother safely born? With that, Asuma also slowly sat in front of the memorial tablet, then took out a cigarette from his cigarette box. After hanging both cigarettes in his mouth, he took out one of them and gently placed it on the stone steps in front of the memorial tablet. Like a whisper, Asuma's voice was a little low and trembling as he said, "Today, Mom and Kurenai are not here, you and I can finally smoke and chat casually, no one cares. Although you usually prefer to use your somewhat old pipe, but today, let's change the taste. After all, your pipe was placed in the Hokage's office as a souvenir by Yondaime." After whispering, Asuma didn't speak again, and the surroundings fell into silence again. How long can a cigarette? In a short while, a cigarette has already burned out. Asuma also used his somewhat rough big hand to wipe his face, then after standing up, he walked straight in the direction of the village's gate. Asuma's voice seemed to be lingering in the wind. I will definitely come back, and watch my child grow up. I've already made up my mind. No matter whether the child is a boy or a girl, his name will be Future, because the place where he grew up and lived was the place where his grandfather, uncle, father, and many more people poured their own blood to create an irreplaceable future. In Nangongja's house, looking at the scroll in front of him, Nangongja's face was gloomy. Sure enough, in fact, Kakuzu and Haiden are actually chess pieces used by the Akatsuki to attract firepower. They so blatantly let Haiden, the leader of the fire temple, go to Woodleaf to ask for help. Due to his identity and the thought of protecting Column Force, Woodleaf definitely couldn't refuse to go forward to stop Haiden and Kakuzu. Haiden and Kakuzu are indeed the best candidates to attract firepower. The two of them, who can't be killed, have already attracted Woodleaf's attention after destroying the fire temple. Out of his own bad taste, he went to provoke Watergate with the matter of Second Last and Column Force's arrest. Woodleaf, on the other hand, did what the Akatsuki wanted and didn't have time to care about other things. During this period of time, the Akatsuki had already found the traces of the Sanbai and directly captured it. And according to the information of the Bloodcloak Pavilion, the ones who took action were Deidara and an unknown ninja with a spiral mask who replaced Sasori. Damn it, I should have seen these flaws. I should have gone to protect the Sanbai in advance. Slamming the scroll in his hand on the ground, Nangongja's face showed a rare trace of annoyance and anger. Nangongja was attracted by the Sanbai and lost his previous sensitive judgment, which naturally made Nangongja very annoyed. However, the real reason that made Nangongzhou unable to calm down was the words that Sanbai had said to him when he rescued it previously. Asking him to leave the ninja world and go to the Lion Clan's different space to lurk. The three last sounded as if everything had been predestined a long time ago. These words have always been a knot in Nangongzhou's heart. It was as if the whole world was following a fixed script, no matter how hard he tried, to change everything, it was just in vain. Such a sense of powerlessness made Nangongzhou angry and made Nangongzhou unable to accept it. You must keep a close eye on the Akatsuki. I don't believe that everything is predestined. Isn't it the pursuit of the cultivators of my generation to conquer the heavens? If this world really has such an inviolable rule, then I will use the sword in my hand to cut a path. This is the path of me, and also the path of banishment senior. After saying these words, Nangongzhou instantly felt a different kind of pressure descending on his head. That kind of irresistible sense of oppression lingered on Nangongzhou's body for a long time, as if his body was entangled with layers of shackles. But when Nangongzhou's idea of going against the heavens was deliberately hidden by Nangongzhou, that sense of restraint quietly disappeared. Is there really an inviolable rule in this world? Nangongzhou didn't know at first, but at this moment, Nangongzhou had some guesses in his heart. Why did Senior Banishment Senior die for no reason when his strength is clearly far superior to mine? What kind of person can defeat and even kill Senior Banishment who is completely beyond the so-called Kage level? The answer is no. Yen. And you. Chapter 425. Asuma, Chiriku, and Shikata were jumping forward in the forest outside the range of the wood leaf. When the wood leaf Umbu determined the range of Haiden and Kakuzu's activities, Watergate immediately handed the relevant information to Asuma. As a survivor of the Fire Temple, Chiriku should stay in the Woodleaf Ninja Village and wait for Asuma to complete the mission, but even Chiriku couldn't calm down for a long time after hearing the news. Watergate had no choice but to let Chiriku and Asuma come together to perform the mission. Before leaving, Watergate also told Asuma that even if the mission fails, he must ensure Chiriku's safety. After all, Chiriku is not a ninja under the wood leaf, but the current abbot of the Fire Temple. Sensei, we have obtained accurate information about Kakuzu and Haiden, but they don't know much about us. This is our advantage, we should make full use of this condition and become the key to our victory. Shikamaru, who was wearing a vest representing the identity of a Chunin, increased his speed to the side of his instructor, Asuma, and said to Asuma. Although his face still looked immature, the light of wisdom that bloomed in his clear eyes was so clear that it could be seen clearly. In the past few years, Shikamaru had also become more and more intelligent. The child who had always been crushed by him in chess had become a seasoned chess player. There were even many times when he would suddenly make a dangerous move that was difficult for him to solve. Asuma is also very clear about Shikamaru's words, so Asuma nodded and said to Shikamaru, "Indeed, fighting is a matter of playing to your strengths and avoiding your weaknesses. Play all the advantages that can be played and avoid all the disadvantages that hinder you. I know, with your character, I know you must have made a lot of plans. But I want to tell you that a plan is always just a plan. In the battle, everything is fleeting. We can't be sure whether we ignore or don't know any important information. At this time, what we need to do is to move forward bravely." As Shikamaru's instructor, Asuma knows Shikamaru very well. Although Shikamaru looked humble most of the time, the pride in his heart was hard to eliminate. This was a flaw in Shikamaru's plan. Even Shikamaru himself understood this. But knowing didn't mean that he could correct himself. Perhaps Shikamaru needed to experience a heart-wrenching pain because of his arrogance before he could truly change. Seeing Asuma teaching his disciple, even Chiku found it hard to get a word in edgewise. Choji and Ino, on the other hand, hid far away as if they were afraid of Asuma nagging at them. After Asuma's awkward silence, they could only fall into silence and continue on their way. Finally, Asuma's group of 5 arrived at the location of Kakuzu and Haiden. Haiden and Kakuzu didn't seem to have any intention of hiding. They just stood on a very conspicuous hill. They looked a little tired as they sat on the ground and leaned gently on the tree behind them. Seeing the arrival of Asuma's group, they didn't look surprised at all. On the contrary, they seemed to have known the arrival of Asuma's group. Seeing Chiku among Asuma's group, Haiden, who was leaning on the tree, said to Kakuzu as if he saw something new. "Hey, this person is really strange. We clearly let him go on purpose, but in the end, he still followed us here. Could it be that after the battle, this bald donkey has realized the strength of Lord Evil G, Sama and wants Master Haiden to personally take him into the arms of Lord Evil G, Sama?" Listening to Haiden's nagging beside him, Kakuzu seemed to be used to Haiden's nagging temperament. Ignoring Haiden, Kakuzu stood up from his sitting position and looked at Asuma's group with interest. Yuan Fei, Asuma, Chiku, and the new pig Shika Dai trio, not bad, not bad. Originally, when I let Chiku go last time, I felt that it was a pity. After all, Chiku has a high reward. I didn't expect that Chiku and Asuma would come this time. At the same time, there are 3 more. Kakuzu stared at the group of 5 standing in front of him. That kind of fanatical gaze made people's hair stand on end. In addition to Kakuzu's words and some information about Kakuzu, Asuma and the others knew that Kakuzu didn't put them in his heart at all. To Kakuzu, they were just a full wallet waiting for him to harvest. Di Lu, who had always been good-tempered, had his eyes wide open at this moment. A rare anger shrouded his heart. Buddha taught his disciple to forgive others, but Buddha also had a fierce gaze. Di Lu thought that he could endure the hatred in his heart, but when he saw the enemy standing in front of him, he couldn't suppress his anger anymore. "Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill." He used chakra to condense the appearance of Thousand Hands Guanyin behind him, but in an instant, the kind Thousand Hands Guanyin turned into an angry King Kong. The palm stretched out from King Kong's body and fiercely slapped towards Haiden's direction with great power, wanting to crush Haiden into a meat paste. Haiden looked at the huge palms that were attacking him, but he didn't dodge. He looked straight at the huge palms with clear lines on them. There was no trace of fear in his eyes. Kakuzu, who had been standing on the side, also made his move. A mask representing the 5 attributes of wind, fire, and earth split from Kakuzu's body. One ninjutsu after another quickly condensed in the mask, and then quickly released. Earth release, earth flow wall. Wind release, pressure. Fire release, first cut. A wall of mud mixed with chakra emerged from the ground. Although it didn't directly resist the huge palms of King Kong, the original momentum of the palms was delayed for a moment. Pressure and first cut were mixed together, forming the power of a mixed ninjutsu. A large flame rushed towards the direction of King Kong and Chiku. Chapter 426. Chiriku's Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill has 2 forms, one is Thousand Hands Guanyin, the other is Angry King Kong. These 2 forms have their own advantages and disadvantages. Thousand Hands Guanyin focuses on defense, while Angry King Kong focuses on offense. Right now, the Dharma idol on Di Lu's body was the glaring Vajra. Although it had a powerful attack power, it had also lost its original defensive power. Looking at the powerful ninjutsu that was mixed together by Kakuzu and Kakuzu, Chiriku could only withdraw his King Kong Dharma idol and leave the range of Kakuzu's mixed ninjutsu. Shikamaru, who has been standing behind Asuma, looked at Chiriku escaping in embarrassment, and his eyebrows slowly wrinkled. They had a plan before coming here. Kakuzu and Haiden's undying ability is very troublesome. They need to use special methods to defeat these undying existences. But when Chiriku saw Haiden and Kakuzu, he lost control of his emotions and directly condensed his form to attack them. Although Shikamaru can understand it, he can't accept it. This kind of deviation from the plan is very displeasing to Shikamaru. Asuma naturally noticed Shikamaru's state, but now is not the time to educate his subordinates. Asuma quickly came to Chiriku's side, covering his retreat, so that Haiden and Kakuzu can't seize the opportunity to attack. Chiriku naturally understood that he had lost his composure and ruined the plan. He looked apologetically at Asuma, who came forward to protect him. He also quickly retreated to the side of Shikamaru and Shikamaru's new trio. "Are you ready? We will act according to the plan." Shikamaru looked at Chiriku and said seriously. After all, he is young and impetuous. When he spoke, he didn't have the slyness of someone who has been in Jianghu for many years. Chiriku directly saw the suppressed annoyance in his eyes. But first, Chiriku is indeed wrong. Second, Chiriku was born to learn Buddhism. If he didn't encounter the enemy who destroyed his life, he could still control his mentality perfectly. Chiriku nodded, apparently agreeing with Shikamaru's words. He also adjusted his mentality and began to prepare to fight Kakuzu and Haiden with the new Ino Shikicho trio and Asuma. Ino rushed in Asuma's direction, and the two of them, one master and one disciple, rushed in the direction of Haiden. Chiriku, Shikamaru, and Choji rushed towards Kakuzu. "Welcome, Thousand Hands Kill. Fire Escape, Incinerate." Chiriku and Asuma used their signature ninjutsu at the same time, attacking Haiden and Kakuzu respectively. The chakra mask that just released the ninjutsu seemed to be condensing chakra to prepare for the next wave of attack, so Kakuzu was very sensible to avoid Kiroku's attack. As for Fei Duan, although he had an immortal body, he could still feel pain. In order to avoid being burned all over his body, Fei Duan also jumped away to avoid Asuma's attack. In an instant it was divided into two parts. Fei Duan himself was actually very troublesome because of his undying ability, but without his undying ability, Fei Duan's strength was actually very ordinary. As a follower of Evil God, in addition to that strange curse technique, Fei Duan could only use his skillful but not that brilliant taijutsu. On the other hand, Asuma himself was very good at fire release, wind release, and taijutsu. A pair of flying swallow blades that could connect to chakra was very difficult to defend against. In order to prevent Fei Duan from suddenly attacking Asuma and getting Asuma's blood, Shikamaru deliberately arranged Ino to fight Fei Duan with Asuma, so that when Asuma was unprepared, she could use the Yamanaka clan's secret technique to control Fei Duan and win a chance for Asuma to survive. Kakuzu himself had 5 chakra hearts of different attributes, and together with the masks, he was like a chakra cannon. Naturally, he needed someone with high HP and high defense to be in the front line, and then find an opportunity for the DPS to display their power. Chiriku, who had the Thousand Hands Kill, was able to display an extremely strong defense when he released the Thousand Hands Guanin, which was enough to block Kakuzu's ninjutsu. Shikamaru himself could also rely on his family's secret shadow technique to find an opportunity to control Kakuzu's movements, and then let Choji use multiplication jutsu to attack. In order to ensure that Choji's attack was strong enough, the Akamichi clan's 3 colored pills, spinach ball and curry ball, were already in Choji's mouth, and the chili ball, which could display the strongest power, was also hidden in his wrist guard. Everything was as Shikamaru calculated before. Fei Duan was tightly entangled by Asuma and Ino, and there was no room for him to display his strength. On Kakuzu's side, Shikamaru, Choji, and Chiriku's progress was also quite smooth. This time, after Di Lu calmed himself down, he was able to display his strength in a stable manner. The Guanin Dharma behind him firmly blocked every attack from Kakuzu. Whether it was the thorns, flames, storms, lightning, or water, they were all firmly blocked by the Guanin Dharma. The mask released by Kakuzu itself needed some time to replenish after exhausting the chakra. Seeing that the chakra contained in the mask was about to be depleted, Kakuzu's mentality slightly fluctuated. The frequency of ninjutsu attacks increased significantly, and Shikamaru, who has been staring at Kakuzu, naturally noticed Kakuzu's state at this moment. Forming a hand seal, a thin black silk-like shadow rushed in the direction of Kakuzu. Seeing that his shadow had touched Kakuzu's shadow, Shikamaru's face showed a victorious smile. Shadow Imitation Jutsu. The moment Shikamaru's chakra surged and launched the ninjutsu, Kakuzu's body became stiff. Choji, now. Seeing that Kakuzu was under his control, Shikamaru immediately reminded Choji to attack. He instantly swallowed the spinach ball and curry ball in his mouth, and a terrifying chakra emerged from Choji's body. Super Multiplication Jutsu. With the powerful chakra erupting from his body, Choji directly broke through his limit. His body expanded dozens of times in an instant, standing on the ground like a small mountain. His huge fist was raised high, and it was about to hit Kakuzu. Chapter 427. Got it. Seeing that Choji was about to attack Kakuzu, Shikamaru said in his heart. From the analysis of the known information, although Kakuzu had 5 hearts, which represented his 5 lives, he couldn't control his masked monsters from a distance. Choji's attack range completely covered Kakuzu's masked monsters and Kakuzu's body, and Shikamaru used shadow imitation to make Kakuzu unable to move and control his masked monsters. One of the members of the undead duo was easily eliminated, and the plan was carried out smoothly. After that, as long as everyone focused their attacks on Haydn wouldn't be able to resist at all, then they would seal Haydn and everything would be fine. But after all, a plan was a plan, and information was information. Just like Asuma said before, Shikamaru relied too much on the information and plans he knew. Seeing that Choji's attack was about to hit Kakuzu, the black threads condensed from the Earth Grudge secret technique were released from Kakuzu's body and wrapped around him layer by layer. Almost in an instant, Kakuzu turned into a black sphere. Choji's punch directly shattered the fire, wind, and earth element masks, but Kakuzu's black sphere didn't seem to suffer too much damage. The black sphere was flattened like a rubber ball after being hit by a huge force. Then, it immediately bounced back from the ground. Because of the huge force, the threads of Earth's grudge that wrapped around Kakuzu's body had cracked a little. Broken black threads floated in the air. When the black sphere bounced into the air, Kakuzu was no longer under the control of Shikamaru's shadow imitation technique. The silk threads wrapped around his body also loosened, revealing Kakuzu. Although the corners of his mouth had a little bit of blood due to the shock, his mental state was very good. Choji, who used super magnification, had a hard time turning around because of his huge body. He could only watch as Kakuzu floated over his head. Chiriku, who had been enduring Kakuzu's attacks, at this moment, his 1,000 arms Avalokiteshvara became thin and trembled, he couldn't maintain it any longer. Kakuzu didn't pay attention to Chiriku, who was no longer able to resist, and 2 hearts representing the lightning and water attributes also split from his body. Threads of Earth Grudge spread out from Kakuzu's body and connected to the 2 masked monsters. The 2 masks released lightning and water at the same time, instantly turning into steam on Kakuzu's body. Kakuzu also stopped in the air for a short time. Shikamaru looked at Kakuzu, who was obviously preparing to attack him, and immediately became vigilant. If he dies, what will happen to Choji, Ino, Asuma-sensei, and even Midland, who is not so familiar with him? Because of his excessive arrogance and self-confidence, these people would fall into a dangerous situation. All of this is because of him. If it's just his own death, Shikamaru may feel that it's a pity, but he doesn't regret it. After all, it's his own mistake, and he can't blame others. But because of his own mistake, other people's lives are involved. Such a thing is what Shikamaru can't bear. Regret, endless regret began to shroud Shikamaru's heart, as if he fell into a dark bottomless abyss. But Shikamaru found himself so powerless, he could only close his eyes and wait for his death. Chapter 428. Dead silence, dark, cold, but with a touch of burning heat, Shikamaru knew that the water curtain covering his body has been hit by the pseudo-darkness. The coldness of the water and the scorching heat of the lightning acted on his body at the same time. Shikamaru, who was originally holding his breath, could no longer hold it back in his body. His mouth was constantly filled with ice water, and his skin was constantly spread by the lightning. The loss of life was so obvious. When Shikamaru felt that his consciousness was a little bit blurred, a huge force grabbed his collar. The feeling of cold and heat that originally shrouded him quickly faded away. Shikamaru's chest was constantly moving up and down, trying to suck the air into his chest. I survived. I survived? But it was obviously a death situation. How did I survive? Shikamaru used all his strength to open his eyes, turning his stiff neck, a familiar face reflected in Shikamaru's eyes. A slightly simple and honest face with a rough beard. This person is his instructor, Yuan Fei Asuma. Asuma-sensei. Looking at Asuma, Shikamaru laboriously called out Asuma's name. The fear and regret in his voice were so obvious. While speaking, Shikamaru's body couldn't help but turn a little bit. Asuma's originally comforting smile was replaced by pain at this moment. Pain? Why is it painful? Looking at the arm that Asuma was grabbing, he found that the originally thick and sturdy arm had now become charred black. When he was wrapped in the water curtain, Kakuzu used the pseudo-darkness lightning ninjutsu. Although water itself is conductive, the lightning produced by chakra is still different from ordinary lightning. In the water curtain, which is also condensed from chakra, the conduction speed of the lightning was reduced a lot, and most of the lightning didn't have time to invade the water curtain, but floated on the surface of the water curtain. Asuma, who stretched out his hand to grab Shikamaru out of the water curtain, naturally suffered far more lightning than Shikamaru. The powerful lightning directly turned Asuma's right arm into a piece of charcoal. With the slight rotation of Shikamaru's body, the charcoal arm naturally broke directly. If the arm was intact, even if it was injured by wood leaf, there would be a way to heal it, but now it has completely turned into a piece of charcoal. It can be said that it is completely useless. As a ninja who is proficient in ninjutsu and taijutsu, losing an arm is almost directly turning him into a cripple. It's okay, everything can wait until the mission is completed. Behind Kakuzu, a figure with chakra condensed on his back quickly rushed towards Kakuzu. When Choji saw that Shikamaru was shrouded in the water curtain, he immediately dispelled his super magnification technique. Suppressing his exhaustion, he stuffed the chili pill hidden in his wrist guard into his mouth. Chakra far more powerful than before burst out from Choji's body. With a powerful step on the ground, Choji's slender body suddenly shot out from the ground, rushing towards Kakuzu. Originally, Choji was going to rescue Shikamaru from the water curtain, but seeing Asuma saving Shikamaru and Asuma's charred right arm, the anger in his heart made Choji immediately turn around and rush towards Kakuzu. Although the fist didn't look like Chakra's chakra, the power contained in it was far beyond the power of Chakra's chakra. Kakuzu didn't have time to react. Choji immediately punched Kakuzu's body continuously. The black threads of the earth grudge were sent flying in the air, and the two remaining masks on Kakuzu's body began to shatter. Kakuzu's eyes, which still had a little bit of vitality, had now lost their luster. Choji's fist didn't stop bombarding Kakuzu's body. The simple and honest Choji was completely controlled by his inner anger. This person who caused his good friend to be seriously injured and his teacher to lose an arm had become the person he hated the most in his life. Looking at Choji, who was immersed in his anger, Chiriku condensed his chakra in his throat, and a thunderous sound rushed out from his throat like the morning bell and evening drum. Choji, calm down. Kakuzu is already dead, the one we should be fighting now isn't him. Right now, Ino is trying her best to control Haiden. What you should do is to follow the previous plan and defeat Haiden and seal him. Otherwise, all our efforts will be in vain. Hearing the thunderous voice of the ground continent, Ding Ji's originally red eyes gradually regained some clarity. That's right, now was not the time for him to vent his anger. He is a ninja, what he should do is to do his best to complete his mission. Choji forcibly turned his eyes away from Kakuzu and looked in the direction of Haiden. Taking advantage of the fact that the power stimulated by the chili ball has not disappeared, Choji quickly rushed towards Haiden. One punch, 2 punches, 3 punches, the seemingly ordinary punches landed on Fei Duan's body, and the huge force directly shattered all the joints on Fei Duan's body. Ino also released her control on Haiden at the right time. In any case, Haydn has no power to resist. Ino, you also need some time to relieve the pressure on your mind. It seems that the seal will need me and Chiriku to preside over it, so it is necessary to accumulate strength at the right time. His limbs were broken, and his spine was broken into several sections. Although Haydn was still breathing, he was paralyzed on the ground and couldn't move. The chakra on Choji's body has slowly faded, and an irresistible sense of exhaustion directly shrouded Choji's heart, and his slender body fell straight to the ground. Fortunately, Tsunade was in Konoha at this moment. Otherwise, Choji, who had overdrawn his chakra after taking the chili pill, didn't know how long it would take for him to recover. As long as Haydn is successfully sealed, this mission is considered over. Only one person was unconscious. One person was seriously injured, and one person lost an arm. The cost of killing two important combat forces of the Akatsuki is not a loss. But as the parties involved, Chiriku, Asuma, and Shinobi Shikigami were not happy at all at this moment. Chapter 429. Chi, the sound of a sharp weapon cutting flesh was so clear, and the arms of the people in front of him had been cut off under the sword. Blood was constantly flowing from the broken wounds, splashing into the sky. The huge amount of blood was so obvious, but such a little blood only added a little bit to the strong smell of blood around him. Sasuke looked around him and suddenly found that no one was standing on the ground. One by one, the masked figures fell to the ground. At a rough glance, there were hundreds of them. It was hard to imagine what kind of battle Sasuke had experienced to create such a battlefield. The ground was slowly covered with the broken limbs of these ninjas, but surprisingly, no one lost their lives. Everyone fell to the ground, wailing and crying in pain. Sasuke's white coat still looked very clean, but Sasuke glanced at a corner of the lower left hem of his clothes with a little disgust. A drop of blood, the size of an ink spot, dyed dark red by blood, was embellished on the white coat. The red that represented life, and the white without any impurities, looked strangely beautiful. It was like a piece of bright red plum blossoms suddenly fell on a pure white snow-covered land. It was obviously beautiful, but Sasuke seemed to be very disgusted that his clothes were contaminated by the enemy's blood. He directly took off the white coat he was wearing from his body, and threw the embroidered, pure white, and apparently very high-end white coat on the ground as if he was throwing away garbage. The blood that had been constantly flowing on the ground had now gathered into a pool of blood on the ground. The white coat was also coincidentally thrown directly into the pool of blood. The blood quickly soaked the white coat, turning it dark red, and the dark lines on the bloody coat became more and more obvious. "So, you are so soft-hearted?" A gloomy and hoarse voice sounded not far behind Sasuke, looking at Sasuke standing on the ground wearing only a sleeveless shirt, and said with a slight mockery and sigh. Sasuke glanced back at Orochimaru who was standing behind him, and said in a cold voice, "The obstacles you set for me this time are really low." He purposely leaked information about me and lured the forces that wanted to eliminate me to attack me. But what difference did it make whether they were killed or not? If I kill them, I'll just be wasting my energy. If I don't kill them, I'll be able to let their masters know that I'm not someone they can easily bully. Or, let someone stronger come and fight me. Otherwise, wouldn't it be better to give up this plan early? Orochimaru stuck out his long tongue from his mouth, waving it in the air like a python flicking its tongue. Looking at the slowly rotating Sharingan in Sasuke's eyes, the more Orochimaru looked, the more his heart itched. His body had already reached its limit. During this period of time, the medicine he used had changed from the original level 4 medicine to level 7 medicine. Moreover, his body's resistance to the medicine was also constantly increasing. As long as he finds an opportunity, he can take Sasuke's body into his own hands. The long-awaited Sharingan, the humiliation of being humiliated by Itachi Uchiha, who was also a member of Akatsuki, can be solved one by one. Thinking of this, Orochimaru's mood couldn't help but get excited. "I'm very pleased that you can think like this. I hope you really think like this, and it's the ruthlessness in your heart that makes you do this, not the remaining weakness. Sasuke gently waved the long sword in his hand, and the blood wrapped around the silver-white blade left the blade under the action of inertia. Sasuke casually put the long sword in his hand back into the scabbard behind him, and looked at Orochimaru with a cold look. In the face of a ruthless target, I will naturally not hesitate to show my ruthless side. You don't need to be noisy here. For Sasuke's disrespectful attitude, Orochimaru just smiled casually. In Orochimaru's eyes, although Sasuke was excellent as his research material, Sasuke could only be his research material. After all, this body is his own. And this indifferent soul would also be devoured by him. So, this is just a temporary offense, what's there to mind? In silence, the two returned to Orochimaru's base near the battlefield. Without saying anything, Sasuke directly separated from Orochimaru and returned to his room. After closing the door of his room, the frost that originally covered Sasuke's face slowly melted. I don't know if the message I left was seen by Nangong, sensei. Orochimaru's desire for me has become more and more obvious recently. And according to my observation, Kabuto has begun to increase the dosage and variety of medicine for Orochimaru. Orochimaru's reincarnation ceremony is estimated to be in a few days. I still have to prepare as soon as possible. I don't know if the method Nangong, sensei told me to deal with Orochimaru will work. Well, no matter whether it works or not, everything depends on this. As long as I succeed, then I can get all of Orochimaru's ninjutsu knowledge through the secret technique. If I don't succeed, I will just lose my life. Such a risk is not a loss. On the battlefield where Sasuke had just fought, a Bloodcloak Pavilion's aquamarine altar disciple in aquamarine clothes had picked up Sasuke's white coat that seemed to have been thrown on the ground because of mysophobia. On the blood-soaked white coat, the lines became more and more conspicuous. These lines were one of the ciphers used by the Blood Cloth Pavilion. This communication method was also the way for Sasuke and Nangongja to exchange information and communicate. This coat will be brought back to the Blood Cloth Pavilion by the Blood Cloth Pavilion disciple who has been responsible for watching Sasuke. After it is cracked by professionals, it will be directly handed over to Nangongja. Orochimaru is also an existence that Nangongja is afraid of. Not only because of his madness, but also because of his research ability that is beyond the reach of ordinary people. Such a freak who is not controlled by anyone is a huge threat. As long as there is a chance, Nangongja doesn't mind taking Orochimaru's life. Chapter 430. Orochimaru-sama, your potion consumption has reached the limit of level 10. If you continue like this, your body won't be able to hold on. I suggest that you change your body as soon as possible, and during this time, Sasuke is not so quiet, he must have found something. We still have to act in advance to reduce all possible troubles. Taking the medicine bowl handed over by Orochimaru, Kabuto respectfully said to Orochimaru. His eyes, which originally looked a little shrewd and treacherous, now glowed with light. It seems that he has some plans in his heart. At this moment, Orochimaru, who has fallen on the bed, was too lazy to pay attention to Kabuto's plans. He just glanced at Kabuto casually, indicating that he doesn't need to continue. Just when Orochimaru wanted to say something, his chest heaved up and down fiercely, as if he was suffering from some great pain. A very painful cough came from Orochimaru's mouth. When Orochimaru raised his head, under his sweat-soaked hair, his eyes were covered with scarlet blood, and his face was getting paler and paler. You can leave first, I will consider what you said. Kabuto knew that Orochimaru didn't want to entangle with him too much on such a topic. For Orochimaru, when he uses the reincarnation jutsu, his body is most dangerous. Even if it's Kabuto, Orochimaru is not willing to give him this degree of trust. Watching Kabuto leave his room, Orochimaru's eyes stared at the door of his room. His eyes seemed to have lost focus for a while, as if his soul was pulled out of his body. But soon, Orochimaru's eyes regained their original color, because Orochimaru sensed a familiar chakra condensing at his door. A white and blue chakra blade pierced through the wooden door, as if ignoring the distance, it went straight to Orochimaru's heart. At this moment, Orochimaru's body is already extremely weak. When he saw such a chakra blade stabbing towards his heart, Orochimaru subconsciously crossed his arms to block this blow. He swung his arm and deflected the chakra blade to the side. The wooden door was cut into many small pieces in an instant. With the sound of the wooden pieces falling to the ground, Sasuke's cold face appeared in Orochimaru's eyes. Sasuke's left hand held the sword-shaped chakra blade shaped by Chidori chakra, and his right hand held the silver long sword that he had always loved. Cough. Orochimaru suddenly coughed a few times. He wanted to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth with his hand, but he found that his hands were pierced by the chakra blade in Sasuke's hand. I thought you would come earlier, but I didn't expect you to come only now. Sasuke and Orochimaru have been together for so long, and they have a proper understanding of each other. Sasuke knows Orochimaru's ambition for his body, and Orochimaru also knows that Sasuke will never be willing to be captured. Therefore, this battle is actually expected by both sides, and there is nothing to be surprised about. What's the difference between earlier and later? Anyway, no matter what, you can't change the fact that I am getting stronger and you are getting weaker and weaker. Remember a few days ago, you said that I am not ruthless enough? Now that I have emptied your value, it's time to deal with you and do what I should do. Sasuke slowly walked in the direction of Orochimaru, and he became more talkative than usual. You covet the blood flowing in my body, and regard me as your own experimental material and reincarnation material. Have you ever thought that all of your plans might be in danger of failure? People like you, to be honest, are the people I hate the most, you know. Looking at Sasuke's face becoming more and more ferocious, Orochimaru looked at Sasuke and laughed. It's really interesting, so you have always cared about such things? You are really naive and childish, always indulging in the actions of others. If I were like you, I wouldn't have been driven out of Woodleaf Ninja Village by my master because of human experiments. Sasuke, you said that you emptied me of everything? To a certain extent, you did gain some of my knowledge and insight. But you still haven't learned the most important characteristic of me, that is, to stick to your own ideas and move forward. Shackled by one's own tragic past, entangled by meaningless contempt. How can someone like you defeat your brother, Uchiha Itachi? Or... Orochimaru's words haven't finished, but the three Tomo in Sasuke's eyes turned quickly. Who allowed you to say this name? Chakra in Sasuke's body surged quickly, and the lightning that had been solidified rushed into Orochimaru's body along the direction of Chidori Egi. While paralyzing Orochimaru's body, it also constantly destroyed Orochimaru's internal organs. Black blood continued to spit out from Orochimaru's mouth, and Orochimaru's body smelled like barbecue. With a flash of determination in his eyes, Orochimaru's mouth suddenly opened, and a huge white shadow flashed. Orochimaru's body was like a snake after shedding its skin, lying on the bed softly. So this is your true body? Sasuke slowly turned his head, and the Chidori Egi in his hand was also touched by Sasuke. It's really ugly. With a little disgust, Sasuke looked at the strange white snake in front of him. The scales on the snake's body were actually made up of white pythons that were as thick as a person's wrist. The pythons were constantly writhing, causing people to involuntarily feel a sense of disgust in their hearts. The most disgusting part was the head of this big snake. The features of a human face and a snake face, and the fluffy and hard black hair were full of a creepy feeling. This was Orochimaru's body, using the immortal reincarnation method, white phosphorus Orochi. At this moment, Orochimaru was obviously ready to seize Sasuke's body and let himself have the coveted Sharingan. Chapter 431. So this is your true body? Looking at Orochimaru, although Sasuke had a feeling of disgust in his eyes, he wasn't surprised. Orochimaru's immortal reincarnation is a ninjutsu beyond ordinary people's knowledge. It's understandable that such a ninjutsu will have a certain impact on life forms. After staying with Orochimaru for so long, whether it's someone who can turn himself into a monster or a liquid, Sasuke hasn't seen such a thing. Just turning himself into a strange python didn't surprise Sasuke. I thought you would be even more surprised. Your indifferent attitude makes me feel very bored. After turning into Orochimaru, Orochimaru's voice also changed. His hoarse and low voice sounded more ethereal at this moment. Surprised? I've already given up on this feeling. On the contrary, I can show you the ruthlessness you said. Sasuke gently pulled the silver long sword in his hand and slowly walked towards Orochimaru. Yes, that's it. Only this side of you is what I need the most. Orochimaru looked at Sasuke's indifferent appearance and began to shout excitedly. The immortal reincarnation was actually very risky. The target of one's reincarnation would instinctively resist the ritual. Under normal circumstances, Orochimaru will choose ninjas with excellent bloodlines but not so powerful as his reincarnation material. Only in this case can the probability of reincarnation be increased. However, because of Orochimaru's desire for Sharingan and his eagerness to challenge and even defeat Itachi, Orochimaru had to let Sasuke's strength quickly accumulate. As a result, Sasuke's strength became very powerful, and even Sasuke hid part of his strength under Orochimaru's supervision. The powerful ninjutsu that Sasuke used just now involves chakra's nature change and shape change. It was quietly practiced under Orochimaru's strict supervision. Orochimaru even suffered a little bit under this trick. Originally, Orochimaru was confident in defeating Sasuke and taking his body, but now, although Orochimaru didn't show it, he was not sure that he could really defeat Sasuke. Seeing Sasuke slowly walking towards him, Orochimaru's heart couldn't help but tighten. The white snakes that made up the scales of the white snake rose into the air and bit toward Sasuke. The silver-white long sword in Sasuke's hand waved casually and cut the white snake that came towards him into two halves. Originally, he thought that Orochimaru would display some special abilities after transforming into his own body, but unexpectedly, Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi state was very fragile. Sasuke attached his lightning attribute chakra to the silver long sword in his hand in the form of Chidori blade, and his cold face showed a cold smile of victory. But just as the long sword was raised halfway, Sasuke felt that his wrist had become weak. The silver-white long sword that was clearly held in his hand fell directly to the ground at this moment, and the crisp sound sounded so clear in the slightly silent room. Ha ha ha. Orochimaru's mouth suddenly came out with a strange smile. The white snake on my body is not just a fragile decoration. Its blood will vaporize into the air at the moment of contact with the air. With the colorless and odorless gas emitted from my body, it will become the most violent hypnotic gas. Now, do you still have a chance to resist me? With that, Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi state body rushed towards Sasuke fiercely. Sasuke tried his best to condense Chidori Agi spear in his hand, and waved it with all his strength to cut off Orochimaru's white phosphorus Orochi body. But the feeling of fatigue that extended from the depths of his heart shrouded Sasuke's heart. Sasuke only felt that his eyes were dark, and he stood directly in place. We meet again. No. This should be the last time we meet, Sasuke. Orochimaru's voice reappeared in Sasuke's ears, and Sasuke opened his eyes and saw the appearance of the space around him. The space with a little pink color looked full of a disgusting feeling. Whether it was the place where he stood or the place where Orochimaru stood, it was like a piece of rotten meat. Not far from Sasuke, a mass of rotten meat wrapped around the body of the person who became Orochimaru's body in the past. So this is the immortal reincarnation? White phosphorus Orochi is actually not the true state of immortal reincarnation. Immortal reincarnation is actually a transformation of his own soul. Then after the preparation is done, he will forcibly invade the mind of the reincarnated person, occupy the consciousness of the reincarnated person, and make the reincarnated person's body into his own marionette? Obviously, it was a matter of life and death, but Sasuke observed his surroundings very indifferently. It seemed that the threat from Orochimaru was not as interesting as such a ninjutsu. Orochimaru also looked at Sasuke calmly. He had been worried that Sasuke would destroy his white phosphorus Orochi's body after he completed the preparation. But now that he has successfully invaded Sasuke's mind, everything will be a matter of course. After all, immortal reincarnation is almost irreversible at this stage. Sasuke also ignored Orochimaru. He waved his hand casually, and the scene around him began to change. The originally disgusting pink space has now turned into a forest scene, and on the stone steps in the forest, Orochimaru, wearing Akatsuki's uniform, and Itachi Uchiha, who Sasuke was thinking about, were looking at each other. There was no sound in the conversation between the two, but Sasuke roughly knew what they were talking about through their lips. Immortal reincarnation was to close all the protection of one's soul and enter the consciousness of the reincarnated person naked. Orochimaru didn't find it strange that Sasuke could see a part of his memory without guarding it. In fact, Orochimaru also recalled the time when he was tightly controlled by Itachi's jutsu, shackle jutsu, and had no room to resist at all when Itachi told him that he was powerless in front of the Sharingan. All this humiliation will end after he obtains Uchiha Sasuke's Sharingan and the complete Uchiha bloodline. Chapter 432. Orochimaru, I always thought you were a smart person. But now it seems that you're still not smart enough. Looking at Orochimaru's excited face, Sasuke's cold face stared closely at Orochimaru's eyes. Although there was no sarcastic smile, Orochimaru still saw the disdain in Sasuke's eyes. It was the same look that Itachi had used to look at him with. Magical Genjutsu, shackle technique. The exact same ninjutsu was cast by Sasuke through his Sharingan, and huge metal wedges were inserted straight into Orochimaru's body. That familiar feeling made Orochimaru's mood become particularly irritable. Am I going to fail again under the power of Sharingan? At the beginning, he failed at the hands of Itachi Uchiha, who already had Manjikyu Sharingan. Now he's going to experience failure again in the hands of Sasuke, who only has 3 Tomo Sharingan. No. Definitely not. Orochimaru manipulated the rotten flesh all over the space to cover Sasuke's body. Obviously, the rotten flesh was constantly eroding Sasuke's consciousness, but Sasuke's expression was still so indifferent, as if he wasn't the one who was about to be invaded. It was still those familiar eyes, the bloody eyes with the 3 Tomo slowly rotating, staring at him so closely, which made Orochimaru more irritable and uneasy. Orochimaru, do you remember what my brother once said to you? Under the gaze of this pair of eyes, you will have nowhere to hide. The familiar words came out of Sasuke's mouth again, and the rotten flesh wrapped around Sasuke's body faded like a tide at this moment. Instead, Orochimaru's body began to be covered by the rotten flesh, and Orochimaru's eyes couldn't help but panic. In this spiritual space, his real spiritual body was destroyed here. Even Orochimaru wasn't sure if he had a chance to be resurrected again. When Orochimaru wanted to say something to Sasuke, the rotten flesh kept pouring into Orochimaru's mouth. Behind Sasuke, the rotten flesh seemed to have completely obeyed Sasuke's command, and a huge rotten snake had condensed there, staring at Orochimaru. Outside the door of Orochimaru's room, Kabuto stared blankly at Sasuke's body that had been broken into 2 parts on the ground. Kabuto knew that the reincarnation ceremony had begun. But Kabuto's heart was still faintly worried, because he was one of the people who had been watching Sasuke. Compared to Orochimaru, who was very confident in himself, or Orochimaru, who never showed his lack of confidence side, Kabuto was undoubtedly more concerned about Sasuke's changes. For Sasuke's growth over the years, Kabuto may be the one who knows better than Orochimaru. Therefore, Kabuto was actually very worried about Orochimaru's safety, but now that the ceremony had begun, Kabuto couldn't do anything, and could only wait for the final result. Sasuke, who was standing in the same place, finally opened his eyes. There was no confusion in his eyes. Instead, he looked very energetic. Kabuto stepped forward and blocked Sasuke, who wanted to walk out of the door. His eyes stared at Sasuke and said, "Now, should I call you Orochimaru-sama, or should I call you Sasuke-kun?" Sasuke's dark eyes glanced at Kabuto, and his face showed his usual cold expression, and said to Kabuto without any expression, "Natural selection, survival of the fittest. Since Orochimaru decided to devour me, then be prepared to be devoured by me. This world, from now on, there will be no such person as Orochimaru. There will only be me, who inherited all his knowledge, Uchiha Sasuke." Listening to Sasuke's words, Kabuto's hand slowly reached for the ninja tool bag behind him. But when his hand reached out, Kabuto put his hand in front of his body again. Kabuto knew that there was no way to fight against the grown Uchiha Sasuke with only the insignificant fighting skills and medical ninjutsu he had mastered, so he could only slowly move aside and let Sasuke walk past him. Sasuke walked out of the base step by step. The base chosen by Orochimaru was naturally a very remote place, so when Sasuke walked out of the base, there was no one around. Just as Sasuke was about to continue walking into the depths of the forest, Sasuke suddenly pulled out the silver-white long sword behind him and looked at the depths of the forest with vigilance. 3 Tomo Sharingan had already appeared in Sasuke's eyes, but even the 3 Tomo Sharingan didn't see anything strange in the forest. But Sasuke's heart really felt that someone was hiding in the forest. This almost animal-like intuition has saved Sasuke many times, so Sasuke decided to believe in his own judgment. "Don't be nervous, it's me." Like a reflection in a deep pool, a figure suddenly emerged in the dark forest. This figure slowly walked towards Sasuke, and his figure became more and more obvious. She was wearing a black outer robe, and there were patterns outlined by red silk threads at the edges. Her soft long hair was draped over her shoulders. "Previously, you contacted the disciples of the Blood Robe Pavilion through the Blood Cloak. After I learned about the situation, I immediately rushed over, hoping to help you. I didn't expect that. It seems that I'm a step late. Your current spiritual strength seems to have been greatly consumed." The person who came was naturally Nangongja. The message that was previously passed to the Blood Robe Pavilion had already reached Nangongja's hands. Nangongja knew that it was not easy to eliminate Orochimaru, so he immediately put down the matter at hand and came here, hoping to assist Sasuke in eliminating Orochimaru. When Nangongja arrived outside the base, he found that Sasuke had already come out from inside. Nangongja didn't doubt that Sasuke was not the real Sasuke, so Nangongja released a faint hostility to be noticed by Sasuke. However, the posture when preparing for battle, the subtle movements on the body can't be done just by imitation, so Nangongja, who found that Sasuke's state was not so normal, immediately greeted him. Chapter 433. Nangongji-sensei, I thought it would be an ordinary disciple of the Blood Cloak Pavilion who would come here to pick me up. I didn't expect you to come in person. Compared to Orochimaru, Sasuke was undoubtedly closer to Nangongja, who gave him a way to gain strength and care when he was at his weakest. Fortunately, you told me the flaw of Orochimaru's immortal reincarnation. Otherwise, I would have been doomed this time. Hearing Sasuke's words, Nangongja didn't know why he felt a little guilty. After all, the reason why he helped Sasuke was because of Itachi. He didn't care for Sasuke with a completely pure purpose. Now that Sasuke pushed the reason for defeating Orochimaru to himself, Nangongja was at a loss for a while. After all, Nangongja only heard Sasuke's description of Orochimaru's reincarnation jutsu. He went to the Blood Cloak Pavilion to check a little bit about the soul, and combined with some information from Itachi, he speculated that Orochimaru's soul should be under great pressure. So he suggested that if Sasuke really fell into a dangerous situation, he could use genjutsu to protect himself. When Orochimaru, who was suspicious, saw that things didn't go in the direction he expected, his inner anxiety would make his mentality unbalanced and create an opportunity for Sasuke to win. But these were all assumptions. Even Nangongja didn't dare to say that his guess was 100% correct. So at this moment, the gratitude from Sasuke was so harsh in Nangongja's ears. When Nangongja was about to say something, Sasuke's body softened and fell to the ground. This child is really defenseless against me? After a spiritual confrontation with Orochimaru, Sasuke's soul must have been exhausted to the extreme. The moment he saw me, he lost control of his body and fainted. Nangongja thought it was completely understandable. Slowly squatting down and carrying Sasuke on his back, Nangongja carried Sasuke away from Orochimaru's base. Before leaving, Nangongja glanced at the entrance of Orochimaru's base from the corner of his eyes. That trace of hostility was so obvious, but looking at Sasuke on his back, Nangongja didn't choose to do anything. Instead, he left the forest. Yakushi Kabuto. After all, he's just a small character who's proficient in medical ninjutsu. The most important thing right now is Sasuke on his back. Sasuke, who fell into a coma, didn't fall asleep unconsciously. Instead, he was deeply entangled by the nightmare. Only Sasuke knew how dangerous it was. In fact, when Sasuke was entangled by those carrion-like things, Sasuke could clearly feel that his body was no longer under his control. Sasuke knew that the reincarnation technique used by Orochimaru had actually taken effect. At the moment of life and death, Sasuke suddenly remembered Nangongja's speculation about the weakness of Orochimaru's reincarnation technique. Associating with part of Orochimaru's memory that he saw before, Sasuke began to exert genjutsu on Orochimaru with his Sharingan, step by step, leading Orochimaru to doubt himself. With the deepening of genjutsu, Orochimaru has been completely immersed in his self-denial. His defeat in the battle with Itachi Uchiha was indeed a huge sore point in Orochimaru's heart. Orochimaru, who was immersed in genjutsu, gradually found it difficult to maintain immortal reincarnation, and Sasuke also organized his spiritual strength at this moment to counterattack. After all, immortal reincarnation is a ritual based on the soul or spiritual strength. Since it's a ritual, it's naturally possible to usurp the dominance. Sasuke directly usurped the dominance of immortal reincarnation and became the controller of immortal reincarnation through the accumulation of spiritual strength after opening his Sharingan. Sasuke sealed Orochimaru's useless memories through the power of immortal reincarnation, and left the knowledge that he thought was useful to him in his spiritual space to slowly absorb. After completing this series of operations, Sasuke actually found it difficult to support his body. But after opening his eyes, he saw Kabuto standing at the door. Sasuke also thought that he couldn't show weakness in front of Kabuto. Otherwise, how could Kabuto, who was as poisonous as Orochimaru, let him leave safely? So, Sasuke walked out of Orochimaru's base. Even if he had noticed that Kabuto was behind him, Sasuke didn't mention any plans to eliminate Kabuto. The moment he saw Nangongja, Sasuke knew that he was safe. Even if there was a Kabuto behind him, for Nangongja, it was completely easy to eliminate him. Only the stronger he was, the more Sasuke understood how powerful Nangong-sensei was when he was young. Not knowing how long it took, Sasuke opened his heavy eyelids, and a slightly dazzling sunlight penetrated through the window of the room where he was. Instinctively, he picked up the silver-white long sword beside him. After looking around vigilantly, Sasuke recalled the fact that he met Nangongja after leaving the base and then fell asleep. Listening to the sound of the wind and the faint sound of birds and insects, Sasuke's heart, which had been tense for 3 years, finally quietly relaxed. For the first time in a long time, he didn't have to worry about whether he would be assassinated or poisoned. Such a relaxed day made Sasuke feel a long-lost peace. Lying back on the rough wooden bed he just slept on, Sasuke didn't close his eyes to rest. Instead, he opened his eyes and looked at the ceiling in front of him. Nearly 3 years of highly stressful life, Sasuke didn't have a chance to relax at all. Every day, he would think about how to make himself stronger, and every day, he would think about how to survive. When all the threats were gone, Sasuke's heart became unexpectedly empty at this moment. What else do I care about? Chapter 434. Faintly, Sasuke felt that his forehead was gently stroked by someone. It seems that because of the environment, Sasuke unknowingly fell into a dream again on this rough wooden bed. Feeling the soft warmth coming from his forehead, Sasuke couldn't help but whisper in his mouth, "Mom. I miss you so much." It was just an instinctive whisper, but when it came out of his mouth, Sasuke really felt like he was being hugged in someone's arms. This feeling was so familiar, although it wasn't as wide as he remembered, the warm touch was the same. Sasuke wanted to open his eyes, but he was afraid that everything he felt now was his illusion. Slightly trembling eyelids and constantly trembling eyelashes, it was enough to see how Sasuke's heart was at the moment. "Child, it's okay. It's all over now. Open your eyes. Mommy is by your side." Uchiha Mikoto's voice appeared in Sasuke's ears. Is all this real? Whether it was the initial touch on the forehead or the subsequent hug, it was all because of such a familiar voice. The moment Sasuke heard the voice, he opened his eyes. Lifting his head from the warm embrace, Sasuke saw a face that appeared countless times in his dreams. Long black hair, black eyes, and a face that always looked gentle. "Mom. Mom. Mom. This is really my mom." The moment he saw Uchiha Mikoto, Sasuke's eyes were filled with tears. Sasuke wanted to say something, he wanted to tell his mother how much he missed her. But when the words came out of his mouth, they all turned into silent sobs. Seeing her child's appearance, Mikoto's heart also fiercely clenched. After so many years, how many things have her child experienced? Mikoto occasionally got some news from Nangongja, Nangongro, and Mashiro. Living alone in Woodleaf with no one to take care of him, in order to become stronger, he ran to Orochimaru. When she heard such news, Mikoto didn't know how many nights she hid in bed and cried secretly. Even several times, Mikoto begged Nangongja to let her go back to Woodleaf to see her child. Seeing Sasuke's lonely appearance, if Mikoto didn't know the consequences of her appearance, she might have already stayed by Sasuke's side to take care of him. Every time Mikoto had the chance to see her child, she would always hold back her tears and clean up the room that was a bit messy due to living alone. Many times, when Sasuke was still living in Woodleaf, he was surprised to find that his room was a lot tidier in the morning, but he couldn't find the reason. It was because Mikoto went back to see her child. After sobbing for a while, Sasuke forced himself to calm down. "I saw with my own eyes that my parents were killed by my brother, Uchiha Itachi, so why is my mother able to appear in front of me?" "Mom. You weren't killed by my brother?" Hearing Sasuke's question, Mikoto's eyes couldn't help but flash a trace of sadness. It wasn't the kind of sadness because she was betrayed by her own family, but the same kind of heartache as she looked at Sasuke. "Your brother, Mikoto just wanted to tell Sasuke the truth of the matter, but her eyes failed to live up to her expectations and tears flowed out, and they couldn't stop for a long time." Sasuke looked at his mother's appearance, but he didn't want to ask his mother the truth and hurt her heart. The door of Sasuke's room was slowly pushed open, and Nangongja and Uchiha Fugaku slowly walked into the room together. Seeing his wife crying, Fugaku didn't ignore his wife's crying like Sasuke remembered, and kept a cold face. Instead, with a face full of care, he gently hugged Mikoto, and whispered as if he was comforting his wife. Nangongja looked at the state of Mikoto and Fugaku, and naturally knew that he could only tell Sasuke these things, so he slowly sat on the edge of Sasuke's bed, and with a little nostalgia and admiration in his eyes, he said to Sasuke, "I know, you must want to know the truth about that bloody night." Sasuke's eyes firmly stared at Nangongja's face. Although he didn't speak, Nangongja understood that Sasuke really wanted him to know the truth. "Sasuke, in your eyes, what kind of image is the Uchiha clan? Are they amiable neighbors, or simple and honest clansmen?" The truth I'm telling you now will overturn everything you know about your childhood. That's because the Uchiha clan is not as kind and amiable as you think. Looking at Sasuke's face, Nangongja said seriously. And Sasuke naturally felt Nangongja's sincerity, and his whole body couldn't help but tense up. You should know, at the beginning of Woodleaf Village, the two pillars that supported Woodleaf Village were the Uchiha clan and the Senju clan. When you were born, the Senju clan was gradually declining, so the Uchiha clan became the only clan left in Woodleaf. This transcendent status not only brought the Uchiha clan a very high status, but it also brought the Uchiha clan an inestimable ambition. Because almost no one in Woodleaf can fight against the power of the Uchiha clan. The people who stand at the second place will always unconsciously look up to the first place. And for the Uchiha clan, who is almost under one and above thousands of people in Woodleaf, they also put their eyes on the top of Woodleaf, the position of Hokage. Listening to Nangongja's words, Sasuke's eyes flashed with a trace of agreement. Just like when he was with Orochimaru, Kabuto always looked for trouble with him. Uchiha clan, perhaps at that time, had the same mentality as Kabuto. But almost all the Hokages of Woodleaf had a close relationship with the Senju clan, and the strength of the Uchiha clan was also feared by many people, so it was impossible to push themselves to the position of Hokage through normal means. So at that time, the head of the Uchiha clan, your father, Uchiha Fugaku, proposed a dangerous plan to push the Uchiha clan to the top, a coup d'état. Chapter 435. When he heard Nangongja mention his father, Sasuke couldn't help but look in the direction of his father. After all, this room wasn't big, and Uchiha Fugaku, who was also in the room, could naturally hear Nangongja's words. However, Fugaku was still wholeheartedly comforting his wife, and he ignored all of Nangongja's words. But, is there an impenetrable wall in this world? Nangongja continued to speak, which attracted Sasuke's somewhat deviated gaze back to him. The Uchiha clan's plot was inevitably discovered by the Woodleaf's higher-ups. At that time, the three generations Hokage wanted to use a conciliatory way to make the Uchiha clan give up such a dangerous idea. However, there was another person in the Woodleaf who also had unparalleled power. He believed that the best way to continue the peace and stability of the Woodleaf was to eliminate the Uchiha clan. This person was the leader of the original root, who has now been expelled from the Woodleaf, Shimura Danzo. Although the fact that Shimura Danzo was expelled from the Woodleaf by Nangongja and Watergate wasn't covered up, this kind of cover-up could only deceive those who didn't have any power. Sasuke, who stayed by Orochimaru's side, naturally came into contact with some information about this matter. Originally, Sasuke didn't care much about Danzo, who had nothing to do with him, but now he didn't expect Nangongja to mention Shimura Danzo again. You should know that Root is also a part of the Umbu, and it's not an exaggeration to call it the Umbu of the Umbu. At that time, your older brother was a member of the Umbu. Under a deliberate arrangement, your older brother Itachi Uchiha finally met with Danzo. As the leader of Roots, it's easy for me to investigate Itachi. Danzo knew that Itachi may not care about many things, but his family has always been the most precious thing to him. Although Sasuke didn't know Danzo's character, when he heard Nangongja's words, his heart couldn't help but lift. The thin veil covering everything that happened around him seemed to be unraveling by Nangongja little by little. So, Danzo gave Itachi a choice, to help Root destroy the Uchiha clan and save his brother's life, or directly die in the Uchiha clan's hands and deaths. As for Itachi's final choice, I think you already know. In order to save your life, your older brother was really ready to put the sword in his hand on the necks of his parents. But at that time, I arrived in time. After talking with Itachi, we worked together to fake your parents' death. Then I secretly rescued your parents and hid them in a different space attached to the ninja world where my summon beast lived until now. With that, Nangongja looked at Sasuke's eyes and said very seriously, your older brother's hands are indeed stained with the blood of his own clansmen. This is his sin. But your older brother also did everything he could do just to save your life. This is his love. Itachi Uchiha, what a pitiful person. Listening to Nangongja's words, Sasuke couldn't help but put himself in Itachi's shoes. If all of this happened to him, what choice would he make? I don't know, I really don't know. Sasuke had no way to get the answer, because no matter how hard Sasuke tried to make himself make the idea of exchanging roles with Itachi Uchiha, the resistance from the heart made Sasuke unwilling to continue thinking about it. Standing up from the bed, Sasuke slowly walked to his parents and quietly looked at his father and mother. Perhaps Fugaku's comfort worked, or she felt Sasuke's gaze. Mikoto's sobbing gradually stopped. Seeing that Mikoto's mental state had stabilized, Fugaku looked at Sasuke and said, "Sasuke, all of this is my..." Halfway through his words, Sasuke forcibly interrupted his father's words. "Don't say anything like an apology, after all, the past is the past. And now..." Looking at Fugaku and Mikoto's faces, and Uchiha Fugaku's face, Sasuke slowly said, "And now, without all the pressure from Uchiha, I believe that father will be able to take good care of mother. The rest is naturally my brother and me. Our Uchiha clan may have been wrong. But such a punishment is indeed a bit too much. I, together with my brother, will definitely seek justice for us. Not for Uchiha, just for our family." Fugaku actually wanted to persuade Sasuke to give up the idea of revenge, but looking at Sasuke's firm look, Fugaku knew that even if he said more, there was no way to change his child's mind. Whether it's himself, Itachi, or his youngest son Sasuke in front of him, they all have a stubborn temperament. She couldn't persuade him otherwise. No matter how thorny the road was, her man would walk to the end without saying a word. Sigh. As if he wanted to express the depression in his chest, after a sigh, Fugaku looked at his child and said, "I know I can't change your mind, you and I are too similar. But after living with your mother in such a peaceful place for the past few years, I've slowly smoothed out my edges and corners. But no matter what, you are my child, Uchiha Fugaku. No matter what kind of suffering you suffer, you must hold back all the tears in your eyes. Because, as long as it's a choice you make, you must unswervingly carry it out. I don't regret my original actions, I only regret that I didn't think it through enough. I know it's not a good habit, but I still hope that you cannot regret every decision you make, good or bad. Do you understand what I mean? I'm proud of my child, Uchiha Sasuke." When Fugaku said these words, Sasuke finally found some of Fugaku's iron-blooded posture when he was the head of the Uchiha clan. Chapter 436. Nangong-sensei, please take me away from here. I still have things I have to do. After determining what he wanted to do now and in the future, Sasuke finally didn't have the confusion and emptiness he had after coming here, and his eyes were shining again. Turning around, looking at Nangongja, Sasuke asked to leave. Because Sasuke knew that there was still someone in the shinobi world who needed his help, and now was not the time to enjoy the peace brought by reuniting with his parents. Although she was reluctant to part with her child, Mikoto still didn't stop Sasuke from leaving. Because Itachi Uchiha, who was struggling in the shinobi world, was also her child, and Mikoto didn't want her precocious child to continue to experience the torment and suffering of today. Nangongja looked at Sasuke and nodded. Taking Sasuke away from the wooden house where Uchiha Fugaku and Uchiha Mikoto lived, he came to the open space outside the wooden house, and slowly unsheathed the sword on his back and inserted it into the ground, and a magic circle quickly formed. Nangongja and Sasuke walked into the magic circle together, and their figures disappeared from the Lion clan's different space. Seeing her child's figure disappear in front of her eyes, Mikoto, who had been forcing herself to maintain a smile, finally couldn't resist the sadness in her heart, and lying in Fugaku's arms, she burst into tears. In another wooden house next to Uchiha Fugaku's wooden house, Uchiha Yuri Koyuri, who was also the last member of the Uchiha clan, was also looking at Fugaku's couple, and his eyes were full of complex emotions, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, Yuri Koyuri's eyes unconsciously turned into the scarlet Sharingan that represented the Uchiha clan, and the three Tomo in Yuri Koyuri's eyes were rotating, and there were even signs of connecting. Sasuke still left. Even though he knew that Nangongja had a lot of information about his brother, Shimura Danzo, and Akatsuki, Sasuke still didn't ask much. He just left Nangongja and jumped into the bottomless ocean of the shinobi world. Since Sasuke has made his own decision, Nangongja thinks that he shouldn't interfere too much. As long as he keeps his attention on Sasuke, it's enough to provide help to Sasuke in a timely situation. What Nangongja should be worried about now was not Sasuke's matter, but something else. Nangongja was infuriated by the fact that the Akatsuki made Kakuzu and Haiden attack Wood Leaf and then secretly captured Nibi and Sanbai. Nangongja felt like he was being looked down upon, which made him very uncomfortable. Since he had been made a fool of, he naturally shouldn't suffer in silence like this. Nangongja decided that he would also make Akatsuki suffer, only then would he be able to avenge himself. Nangongja didn't dare to say that he could completely eliminate the Akatsuki. After all, the Akatsuki may have some hidden cards that they haven't used yet. But with the power of himself and the Blood Cloak Pavilion, Nangongja believed that he could give the Akatsuki a few setbacks. During this time, Nangongja actually discovered that Jiraiya quietly left Wood Leaf and secretly tracked the Akatsuki's information. So of course, he didn't mind giving Jiraiya some help and sharing some of the key information he collected with him. As the sensei of the Akatsuki's leader, Jiraiya should also be able to play a very effective role, right? Not only that, Nangongja also intends to unconditionally share the information of the Akatsuki with other ninja villages in the ninja world. Even if such information can't get the attention he expects, in order to protect the people of his ninja village, Column Force, every ninja village will take action. At that time, let's see what kind of price the Akatsuki will pay to collect the bijou. Nangongja inserted his Heaven's Disaster Sword into the ground again, and through the Lion Clan's different space, he came to the headquarters of the Blood Cloak Pavilion with his own mark. Without disturbing anyone, Nangongja quietly entered his office. He read the scrolls on his desk over and over again, and sometimes even compared the map of the ninja world hanging in his office, silently thinking about something. And Jiraiya, who was constantly looking for information about the Akatsuki in the ninja world, was walking on the street at this moment, looking slightly depressed. Since returning to Wood Leaf and seeing the improvement of the relationship between Watergate and Naruto, Jiraiya quietly told Watergate and left Wood Leaf to look for information about the Akatsuki in the ninja world. Whether it was Jiraiya or Minato, both of them were very concerned about Akatsuki's affairs, and all the fragmented information about Akatsuki obtained from Root made Jiraiya especially concerned about this organization established by his three disciples, who once had a master-disciple relationship with him. What kind of thing happened that made the organization created by his three kind disciples become such a threat to the entire shinobi world? But no matter how hard Jiraiya tried, and didn't hesitate to follow up every clue related to the Akatsuki, these clues all led to a dead end. After all, Jiraiya is just one person, although he can occasionally borrow some resources from Wood Leaf. The Akatsuki itself is very concerned about the confidentiality of its information, and Wood Leaf can't put all its intelligence power on the Akatsuki. In the ninja world, there are many forces that need the Wood Leaf village to focus on, but because of the lack of personnel, Wood Leaf can only choose among these forces. Even Watergate, whether it's because of his duty as Hokage or because of his own personal feelings, it's impossible for him to be so strict. And now, the reason why Jiraiya's face was full of depression, because a very valuable clue once again led to a dead end. In order to relieve the depression in his heart, Jiraiya decided to go out for a drink. Casually looking at the shops on the street, Jiraiya's eyes caught the sign of an izakaya. Since he just wanted to drink a little wine, an izakaya appeared in front of him, and it seemed to be an old shop. Jiraiya naturally couldn't stop the alcohol in his stomach and immediately walked to the izakaya. Under the hospitality of the waiter, Jiraiya sat in a slightly secluded corner. Casually ordering a plate of assorted snacks and a sake, Jiraiya sat on the tatami in a daze. Chapter 437. Perhaps Jiraiya's mind was too tense during this period of time. When Jiraiya sat in his seat, he unconsciously emptied his mind. When Jiraiya regained his spirit, the sake and snacks he ordered were already placed on the small table on the tatami in front of him. The sake didn't come in the form of a large glass bottle. Instead, it was placed in a crude-looking wine separator. This crude porcelain separator was placed in a small pot on a copper stove to maintain a warm temperature. Jiraiya picked up a small piece of cloth next to the copper stove and used the cloth as a partition to take out the rough porcelain divider heated on the copper stove. The clear liquor was slowly poured out from the slightly rough porcelain divider. The liquor was slightly sticky, and a fragrance with the smell of cherry blossoms also wafted out from the liquor. Putting the rough porcelain divider back into the hot water, Jiraiya picked up the wine glass in front of him and sniffed it gently. The sweet fragrance of cherry blossoms became stronger, and a look of satisfaction appeared on Jiraiya's face. The heavy pressure that entangled his soul and heart was weakened a little at this moment because of this fragrance. Sure enough, this izakaya that can last for a long time has its own advantages. Thinking of this, Jiraiya couldn't help but feel a little proud. After all, he didn't hesitate to choose this izakaya. It was enough to see the precision of his choice and the high taste. He took a sip of the cherry blossoms in the wine glass in his hand. It didn't have the sweet feeling that he imagined. Whether it was the sweetness or the fragrance, it was just right. Holding the sake in his mouth, he slowly felt the taste from the liquor. When Jiraiya felt that he had fully felt the various tastes contained in this warm liquor, Jiraiya swallowed the liquor in his mouth into his stomach. After tasting the sake, Jiraiya couldn't help but be a little interested in the snacks provided by this izakaya. Jiraiya put his hand on the plate with the snacks and wanted to reach out and pick up a snack, but Jiraiya's hand didn't reach out for a long time. It wasn't because of how exquisite the desserts on the plate were, but because Jiraiya saw a piece of paper under the plate in front of him. Jiraiya, who was attracted by the fragrance of sake, was so careless that he didn't notice that there was a piece of paper under the snack plate in front of him. Jiraiya pulled out the paper under the plate without a trace. He didn't deliberately hide it. Instead, he casually looked at the paper in his hand as if he was looking at his shopping receipt. Although Jiraiya's complexion was still so relaxed, but his eyes couldn't help but flash with light. The information of Akatsuki that he had been looking for was actually written clearly on this thin piece of paper at this moment. Akatsuki Organization, Rain Country, please be careful. 3 short words were written on this piece of paper, but the information contained in it exceeded all the information collected by Jiraiya in the past few months. Because this piece of paper had clearly stated the location of Akatsuki, all the secret bases of Akatsuki that were used to confuse the public were all excluded from Jiraiya's mind at this moment. And when he saw the 3 words, Rain Country, Jiraiya instantly became enlightened. Yes. Wasn't the country of Rain the place that had the most contact with his 3 disciples? It's the place where they struggled to survive in the war, it's the place where they first established Akatsuki, it's the place where they really determined their aspirations. But how could he have unknowingly overlooked such an obvious point? Perhaps it's because Akatsuki suffered a big loss here, so they will definitely change their organization's base. Remembering such a short few words in his mind, Jiraiya was just about to tear up the paper in his hand, but he couldn't help but put his eyes on the short few words on the paper. These 3 lines of words were written with strong strokes and full of power. It's almost the first time Jiraiya saw it. The most important thing is that after staring at these words for a long time, his eyes can't help but feel a tingling sensation. This feeling, Jiraiya only felt on one person, and that was Nangongja, who couldn't perfectly hide the sword chi in his body. It seems that this message is from Nangongja, right? Nangongja is also very mysterious to Jiraiya. After all, Nangongja has always been staying in the wood leaf, seemingly aloof from worldly affairs, but whenever something very important happens, Jiraiya can always see Nangongja's figure in the light or in the dark. But at this moment, Jiraiya's heart is completely tied to his 3 former disciples in the Rain Country, especially Nagato, who has red hair and eyes from the Rikudo Sennin. Jiraiya has no idea what the power contained in such a pair of eyes will be like when used to the extreme. Compared to such a direct threat, Nangong's interesting little secret is not so important. After all, the current Nangongja can't be said to be harmless, but at least for the wood leaf, there is no big threat to the ninja world. After staring at the paper for a long time, Jiraiya tore the paper in his hand that Nangongja personally wrote, and the sword chi mixed in the paper was released in an instant. Obviously, it was only as thick as a silk thread, but when it passed through the coarse porcelain wine separator, it directly cut the wine separator in half, and the cut surface was extremely smooth. Really impulsive. If I knew this would happen, I would have gone out and tore this paper, wasting a pot of wine. Instead of lamenting the powerful attack of Nangongja's sword chi, Jiraiya began to regret that he only drank a cup of sake. Jiraiya's heart is really big. Looking at the coarse porcelain wine separator that has been filled with a lot of hot water, Jiraiya shook his head slightly, took out a few coins from his arms and put them on the table. Without looking back, Jiraiya directly walked out of the izakaya's door, but the clerk in the izakaya completely ignored Jiraiya, and didn't even check how much money Jiraiya left and let him leave. If you look carefully at the signboard of this izakaya, you may find a small and imperceptible red mark on the signboard at the door of this izakaya, which is the symbol of the Bloodcloak Pavilion. Chapter 438. Next to a waterfall near the periphery of Woodleaf, Naruto was topless at the moment, and his shadow clones were standing neatly in a row in front of the waterfall. Watergate's goal for Naruto was to let Watergate use his chakra to stop the flow of the waterfall, and then let the waterfall flow backward. After a period of hard work, Naruto was able to stop the waterfall, but it has been difficult for him to make the waterfall flow backward through the strong wind generated by his chakra. Especially when he heard that under the guidance of Shikamaru Trio, Yuan Fei and Asuma lost an arm in order to stop the Akatsuki from coming to Woodleaf to capture Nine Tails, Naruto's heart became more and more impatient. But things are often like this, more haste, less speed. That impatient mood made Naruto's progress even slower, and even faintly, it was difficult to maintain the current level. After all, he is his own child. Watergate naturally understands Naruto's mentality. But Watergate knows that he can't say too much about such things. Maybe his persuasion will indeed let Naruto get rid of the current confusion, but every time Naruto falls into a dilemma, he can't rely on others' help to get out of the predicament, right? As a qualified ninja, he must learn to face all difficulties. Watergate is very clear about this, so he resisted his desire to persuade his child. Watergate can only stand beside the waterfall and watch Naruto compete with the waterfall, and with himself. Damn it! Why can't I succeed? If I can become stronger, then all this won't happen. Looking at the waterfall that stopped in front of him for a moment, but continued to flow again, Naruto's mouth made a violent roar, and all the shadow clones turned into disgust. Naruto fiercely sat in the water, his right hand clenched into a fist, and punched the water. Circles of water splashed high under the influence of Naruto's strength. Seeing Naruto's discouraged and angry appearance, Watergate's figure suddenly appeared beside Naruto. Naruto raised his head and looked at his father who appeared beside him, and his eyes couldn't help but have a look of hope. Obviously, he hoped that his father, who is far superior to him, can give him some guidance on such matters. But at the moment, Watergate's face was not the excited and warm smile he had when he was training and researching with him. Instead, it was more like the usual Watergate's face that Naruto saw in the Hokage's office, with a serious and cold look on his face. Are you done acting like a spoiled child? Watergate looked condescendingly at Naruto, who was sitting on the ground, and looked at the depressed Naruto on the ground. Hearing Watergate's words, Naruto just wanted to open his mouth and argue for himself, but he was abruptly suppressed by Watergate's serious and cold eyes. As a person, it's normal to instinctively seek help from others when you encounter difficulties. So now that you have encountered difficulties in your training, I can completely understand your feelings of wanting me to give you some advice. But you are not only an ordinary person, but also a ninja who puts his own life on the line. When performing tasks, you not only have to face the enemy's attack, but also have to face all kinds of problems from the enemy or from your own side. At that time, are you sure you can find a person to point out a bright way for you to face the difficulties you face? Watergate's words were sincere and cold. But Naruto understood the meaning of Watergate. Watergate didn't want him to rely too much on others. As a ninja, as long as he accepts the task, although he can use the strength and assistance of his teammates, but in the end, he still needs to grow his own strength. Now Naruto, in Watergate's view, has not reached a situation where he can't break through the dilemma. In this case, Watergate certainly doesn't want Naruto to rely on others. I understand, Dad. I will continue to work hard. After all, between father and son, there is no need for so many words, often just a few short words, both sides understand each other's meaning. Perhaps this is the way men communicate with each other. Ninjutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto put his hands in front of him, and clouds of smoke were produced around Naruto. After resummoning his shadow clones, Naruto and his shadow clones looked at each other and said loudly, "What is our ninjutsu?" Hearing Naruto's words, Naruto's shadow clones were also excited in an instant. "Go forward bravely, that is our ninjutsu." One by one, the shadow clones either clenched their fists or jumped in the air, shouting their slogans excitedly. Seeing his shadow clone jutsu so excited, Naruto nodded and said with relief, "That's right. Yes, I am the man who will become the Hokage. Such a small problem is just a stone on the road in front of us. Now, let's go all out." "Oh. Let's go. Yes, it's just a small difficulty." Looking at Naruto and his shadow clones encouraging each other, Watergate's face couldn't help but pull out a smile. The only person who can maintain such a relationship with his shadow clone jutsu is Naruto, right? Seeing Naruto's fighting spirit reignited, Watergate also nodded with relief. During this period of time, Watergate actually had a lot of official business to deal with, and they were all important affairs that needed to be dealt with personally, so after seeing Naruto return to normal, Watergate also used Flying Thunder God Jutsu to leave the waterfall. Naruto, who was concentrating on his own training, also completely devoted his mind to his own training. With the Flying Thunder God technique, Minato arrived in his office. Suddenly, Minato's eyebrows slightly knitted together. He bit his thumb and quickly made a hand seal. After that, he pressed his hand to the ground and said softly, "You're right. You're right." Summoning Jutsu. A small and delicate toad appeared in front of the water gate and said respectfully to the water gate, "The water gate has been destroyed. Watergate-sama, Jiraiya-sama asked me to pass you a piece of information. The matter is very important, and I hope you can deal with it as soon as possible." When hearing the name of Jiraiya, Watergate immediately connected the matter about Akatsuki that Jiraiya was painstakingly searching for, and his heart couldn't help but slowly sink. Chapter 439. Hearing the news from the little toad, Minato's mood became gloomy, but out of respect for the toads of Mount Myaboku and his dignity as a Hokage, Minato forced himself to calm down, and said to the little toad in front of him, "Ha ha ha, I'm sorry. In that case, give me the letter that Jiraiya-sensei gave me first." The little toad nodded, then opened his mouth wide, and a scroll bigger than the little toad's body was spat out from his mouth. Even though it was spat out from their mouths, the scroll wasn't stained with any mucus from the toads' mouths. This was because the little toads used to communicate normally cultivated a special secret technique. Not only did their mouths lead to their stomachs, they also led to a small space used to store items. Watergate took the scroll spat out by the little toad, smiled at the little toad and said, "Okay, I've got the letter. You can go back and report first." The little toad seemed to like Watergate very much. The little toad's face showed a toad-like smile, and said to Watergate in his slightly immature voice, "Okay, Watergate-sama. If there's anything else, remember to call me." Looking at the lively appearance of the little toad, the worry in Watergate's heart was unconsciously relieved. Watergate stretched out his hand and patted the little toad's head a few times, then said to the little toad very gently, "Got it, you go back and report first. If there's a letter that needs to be sent, I will ask you to deliver it to me." After being patted on the head by Watergate and hearing Watergate's words, the little toad looked satisfied. A burst of smoke rose, and the figure of the little toad slowly disappeared. But after the figure disappeared, the little toad still left a soft murmur in the air before he left. "Minato-sama is still the best. He's sunny and handsome. Unlike Jiraiya-sama, who looks like a perverted uncle. Every time he sees me, he always has a bad look on his face. Sometimes he even jokes about me. I'm a girl." Of course, the little toad didn't know that the murmur before he left was clearly heard by Watergate's sensitive ears. Watergate's face couldn't help but show a bit of an awkward smile. Is my sensei's reputation now bad enough to reach Mount Myaboku? Although Minato felt that he couldn't tell what a male toad looked like and what a female toad looked like, he didn't know. After expelling these complicated thoughts from his head one by one, Minato picked up the scroll that Jiraiya passed to him and carefully observed the lines on the scroll. Minato put the scroll on his desk and quickly printed a few hand seals. Then, Watergate gently pressed his hand on the scroll, and a burst of light surged, and the dark red lines on the scroll slowly disappeared. Seeing that the seal on the scroll has been unlocked, Watergate finally took the scroll back in his hand. Slowly opening the scroll, Watergate began to browse the text in it. But the more he read, the gloomier Watergate's face became. Jiraiya-sensei actually went to the Rain Country alone to stop his former disciple from continuing such a dangerous action? And the source of Jiraiya-sensei's information is actually Nangongja, who has been living in Woodleaf. Watergate's heart at this moment couldn't help but burst into anger. At this moment, Watergate just wanted to push the door directly, go to Nangongja's house, grab Nangongja's collar, and ask why Nangongja deliberately pushed his sensei into such a dangerous situation. But as a ninja, as a Hokage, his personal feelings can't interfere with his behavior during his tenure. This is the rule that Watergate himself made for himself. Perhaps even Nangongja didn't expect that Jiraiya turned out to be such a reckless person. After all, in Nangongja's impression of Jiraiya, Jiraiya is a relatively stable person. Whether it was when he fought under Jiraiya during the Shinobi World War, or later when he lived in Konoha, Jiraiya's help in all aspects made Nangongja maintain a steady image in his heart. Nangongja gave such information to Jiraiya. In fact, he wanted Jiraiya to inform Watergate, and then gather a certain amount of power in Woodleaf Village to cause a certain amount of hindrance to Akatsuki. But Nangongja never thought that when things involve people close to him, Jiraiya would become so impulsive and arbitrary. He just told Watergate, without even asking for permission. He directly went to face the leader of Akatsuki. Closing the scroll in his hand, Watergate began to slowly estimate Jiraiya's position in his mind. Jiraiya was originally near the border of the Land of Rice and the Land of Fire. After receiving Nangongja's information, Jiraiya immediately set off for the Land of Rain after thinking for a while. According to Jiraiya's temperament, at this moment, he must be impatient to a certain extent. In order to increase his speed, Jiraiya is likely to summon the toad from Mount Myaboku. Counting the speed of the letter and Jiraiya's full speed, Watergate desperately found that even if he used Body Flicker Jutsu and Flying Thunder God Jutsu to reach Jiraiya-sensei's side, it seems that he can only see Jiraiya-sensei in the Land of Rain. At that time, everything must have been settled. With a wave of his hand, he summoned the Umbu hidden in his office. A man wearing an Umbu mask knelt in front of Watergate, waiting for Watergate's instructions. You immediately inform Shikaku Nara that I have something to do and will leave Woodleaf. I will leave a shadow clone in Woodleaf and let Shikaku Nara be prepared to deal with official business with my shadow clone. The Umbu kneeling in front of Watergate nodded in response to Watergate's order, then his figure flashed and disappeared. Watergate made a hand seal, and a shadow clone appeared beside him. Minato said to his shadow doppelganger, then, "I'll leave everything in Woodleaf to you. No matter what, I have to catch up with Jiraiya-sensei as soon as possible. At least, I have to ensure Jiraiya-sensei's life." Watergate's shadow clone and Watergate were in the same body, so he seriously said to Watergate, "Be sure to save Jiraiya-sensei's life. I'll take care of everything here." Watergate heard his shadow clone's words, nodded, and then immediately used body flicker jutsu to leave the Hokage's office. Soon after, Watergate immediately summoned Gamabunta to hurry on his way outside the Woodleaf. Chapter 440. Let's not talk about the scene of Watergate rushing madly after summoning Bunta, let's focus on Jiraiya again. After a rapid journey, Jiraiya has arrived near the border of the Rain Country. Looking at the rain and the air in the Rain Country, Jiraiya's mood became more and more uneasy. Is he finally going to see the three disciples of the Rain Country that he has not seen for many years? Jiraiya really wanted to ask his disciples what kind of experience made them start to do such a thing that is likely to cause another shinobi world war. Standing next to Jiraiya, Tadashi said to Jiraiya with a little sadness, "Jiraiya, are you sure you want to go directly to your former disciples? I don't think this is a good choice. After all, it has been so long. The disciples you knew before and now may be different." Tadashi is the summon beast that Jiraiya often summons, so there is a very deep friendship between them. Seeing Jiraiya's impulsiveness, he couldn't help but talk a little more to Jiraiya. But Jiraiya shook his head and said to Tadashi, "I know what you mean, and I know I was a little impulsive this time. But I still couldn't help but come here. The emotions that are about to burst out of my heart have completely suppressed my inner reason. Tadashi, you know, I have never been a rational person. Don't worry, I will be careful. If I can't, I will summon Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin to use Sage Mode. Even if I can't win, escaping is not a problem." Hearing Jiraiya's words, Tadashi also nodded. As a summoned beast from Mount Mayaboku, he naturally knows how powerful Sage Mode is. Jiraiya himself is a real Kage-level ninja, and with the help of Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin, he can naturally survive. Then be careful. As long as something goes wrong, I hope you won't be impulsive and leave immediately. After saying this, Tadashi directly turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared from Jiraiya's sight. Jiraiya looked at the road in front of him, and in a blink of an eye, his figure disappeared without a trace. In the central tower of the Rain Village, Pain was looking at the rainy sky in front of him with a cold face. The damp and cold air gently blew across Pain's face, but Pain seemed to be unaware of it. His face was cold and indifferent. But such indifference and numbness suddenly disappeared, as if a soul was injected into a puppet. Pain's Rinnegan was instantly filled with vigor. As if he had discovered something interesting, Pain murmured slightly, "That's right. How interesting. I didn't expect him to come." The entire range of Amigakure is covered by Pain's Rain Tiger Freedom Jutsu. As long as the raindrops containing Pain's chakra fall on the body, it is equivalent to entering Pain's monitoring range. There were all kinds of ninjutsu in the world, and it was impossible for Jiraiya to know all of them. Therefore, when he entered the Amigakure, Pain had already discovered him. Pain's figure suddenly disappeared from the tower and appeared in an open space slightly outside Amigakure. And the place where Pain appeared was naturally the place where Jiraiya was hiding. "Sensei, since you're here, you don't have to hide anymore, right?" Pain looked around and didn't directly find Jiraiya's figure, but the Rain Tiger Freedom Jutsu he used completely revealed Jiraiya's hiding place in front of Jiraiya. Looking at Pain, who was staring straight at him, Jiraiya naturally knew that he had been discovered, so he walked out of his hiding place. "I didn't expect that the last time we met, you were still helpless children. Now, we are standing directly on the opposite side. Jiraiya looked at Pain, who had yellow hair and black chakra sticks on his face, and said with a little emotion, "What should I call you now? The leader of Akatsuki, Pain, Yahiko, or Nagato?" When Jiraiya saw Pain for the first time, he recognized that this body was one of his former disciples, Yahiko, who was forced to death by Hanzo the Salamander and Shimura Danzo. But in Yahiko's eyes, there was the Rinnegan that belonged to another disciple of his, Nagato. "It doesn't matter, a name is just a code name. You can call me anything, but maybe Pain is more suitable for my current appearance, right?" Unaffected by the attack in Jiraiya's words, Pain still looked at Jiraiya indifferently. Looking at Pain's unmoved look, Jiraiya couldn't help but sigh, and said to Pain with a gloomy face, "You really can't stop the dangerous plan you are carrying out? You, Conan, and Yahiko are all victims of the war, and your current actions are triggering the next war. Do you want more people to experience the sadness you have experienced before?" Pain listened to the words of his former master, Jiraiya, and his expression unconsciously became a bit arrogant. "Jiraiya-sensei, do you know? A long time ago, I was afraid of my eyes, especially when I knew that they were the eyes of the Six Paths Sennin, the ancestor of Shinobi world. The fear in my heart was like a wild grass that kept growing crazily. But after I saw Yahiko being forced to death, I finally understood why I have these eyes. This world is sick. And it's terminally ill, and it needs urgent treatment. My eyes were given to me by the Six Paths Sennin to save the world. I want to perform surgery on the terminally ill Shinobi world. I want this world to be free from the threat of war, and this is the ultimate goal of my plan." Listening to Pain's discovery of him as a savior, Jiraiya looked at Pain's strange eyes and shook his head and said to Pain, "It's not just the world that's sick, you're sick too. Your current behavior is creating more pain, and I won't let you do that. No one can change the whole world with their own strength. What we can do is to make everyone understand each other, so that the world can be peaceful for a long time." Chapter 441. Creating a Deeper Pain? Hearing Jiraiya's words, Pain didn't refute it at all. Instead, he nodded with a little agreement and said to Jiraiya, "Yes. I'm creating a deeper pain. Jiraiya-sensei, I don't know if you have such a feeling. Whenever something happy happens around you, even if it has a deep impact on you, after a period of time, your memory of this so-called happiness will gradually become blurry. But when something hurts you, even if it's a small injury, you can still remember it very clearly. If it causes serious loss and harm to you, even if you deliberately forget it, once you get a little incentive, you will immediately recall the pain you suffered at the time." Looking at Jiraiya, Pain slowly threw out his own question. Jiraiya racked his brain, hoping to refute Pain's words, but after thinking about it, he found that all his refutations seemed to have some loopholes and reluctance. People themselves need to experience pain to grow up. Jiraiya couldn't find the slightest reason to refute this matter. When you were young, you ran too fast and didn't see a small stone on the ground clearly and fell down. Pain will be written in your memory for you. Don't ignore the surroundings when you run, or you will get hurt. Although such a memory may be erased, the truth will always stay in your memory, so that you will always remember the pain you suffered because you didn't pay attention to the surroundings. Compared to happiness, pain can leave a deeper impression on people. This is human nature. Seeing that Jiraiya still couldn't find a reason to refute for a long time, Pain didn't deliberately let Jiraiya express his opinion. Instead, he continued, "The reason why Akatsuki was named Akatsuki by me, Yahiko, and Conan is because we hope that the organization we established can become the people who bring light to the shinobi world during such a dark time. At first, we hoped to bring peace through more conciliatory means, just like what you said, Jiraiya-sensei. But what did we get? He was hunted down, threatened, and betrayed. This is what we've been through. We clearly don't have any evil intentions. We're working hard for such a noble cause. But why are we being treated like this?" At that time, I didn't understand. However, when Yahiko was forced into a difficult situation by Hanzo and Shimura Danzo, and sacrificed his life to save others, I knew that our previous actions could not bring peace to the shinobi world. Shinobi world is a child who needs to be educated. Only unforgettable pain can make this naughty child understand how to be a good baby. The shinobi world needs more pain. Because this kind of pain is the most powerful seed to save the ninja world. Obviously, he was talking about the unfair treatment he had experienced, but Pain's face was still as usual, without any remorse or annoyance, as if he was telling someone else's story. But when Pain said that the ninja world needs pain, the emotions that were deeply accumulated in his heart finally gushed out. That cold face finally had a trace of human color, instead of a god who bemoans the state of the universe. Listening to Pain's words, Jiraiya couldn't help but remember a prophecy made by the great Toad Sage. Among his disciples, not only will there be a child of prophecy, who can save the shinobi world and end the war, but at the same time, there will also be a child of war, who will start the war for the shinobi world. Although Pain didn't say his plan clearly, the way to educate the disobedient children in the entire shinobi world, after thinking about it carefully, is bound to have a great impact and cause great harm to the entire shinobi world, isn't it? Child of war? Looking at Pain, Jiraiya's mouth gradually murmured, with a bit of sadness and sympathy in his eyes. But then, Jiraiya's eyes became firm. Pain, to be honest, my vision is not as long-term as yours. You have put your vision beyond human and put God in the position of God. You even call the people in the entire shinobi world disobedient children. I don't think I don't have such a mindset. Compared with you, maybe I'm just a frog in the well who spies on the world in a dry well. But when you decided to make the entire shinobi world feel pain through war, didn't you become one of the disobedient children? Indeed, the Rinnegan you have is undoubtedly the God's eye, but your body and your soul are still a mortal born and raised in the mortal world. When a mortal places himself in the position of a god, what he brings to others and himself is not salvation, but destruction. You have embarked on the wrong path. As your teacher, teaching those naughty children is also my duty and obligation. Pain. No. Nagato, I will stop you from doing such a dangerous thing. With that, Jiraiya's body slowly squatted down, one hand on the ninja backpack behind him, and the other hand opened in front of his body. His white hair moved without wind, and Jiraiya's face, which often had a wretched smile, was particularly serious at this moment. Obviously, Jiraiya was ready to fight. Pain looked at Jiraiya opposite him, and his eyes couldn't help but have a bit of reminiscence. During the time when Jiraiya stayed in the Rain Country, he protected Yahiko and Konan again and again. Wasn't that the same expression he had on his face? Although Pain had been saying before that happy memories were always easy to fade away, Garen didn't know what to say. But at this moment, Pain doesn't seem to have completely forgotten those difficult but extraordinarily happy days. Jiraiya-sensei, to be honest, I don't want to fight with you. After all, you and I used to have a master-disciple relationship. As long as you are willing to leave and promise that you will not interfere in the affairs of Akatsuki and the shinobi world, I can let you go. Pain was still a little soft for his former teacher, and he even let Jiraiya go. But as Jiraiya's disciple, Pain naturally knew that his persuasion was useless. After all, Jiraiya is such a person who can put his own safety in the lowest position for a more noble cause. Chapter 442. Sure enough, after hearing Pain's pity because of the meeting, Jiraiya didn't really leave as Pain said. Instead, Jiraiya took a firm step forward and said to Pain, "You can't do anything to me. People will die in the end, the only difference is here and elsewhere. I have lived in such a chaotic ninja world for so long, I have experienced happiness, and I have also experienced pain. Now, if I sacrifice my life to alleviate the pain that more people and even the entire ninja world will experience, I don't think it's a bad thing." Although he said so, Jiraiya's eyes flashed with a trace of regret. After all, before Jiraiya left Woodleaf, he went to see Tsunade once. On that day, the two talked about a lot of topics that they had never talked about before. Because at that time, Jiraiya already knew that he was facing a death threat that may be more terrible than any previous mission, so under such threat, Jiraiya finally restrained his usual unruly appearance and seriously had a conversation with Tsunade, the woman he loved all his life. No one knew the process of the conversation, but whether it was Tsunade, who was sitting in her living room, or Jiraiya, who had just walked out of the mansion gate, both of them were over 50 years old and experienced the world, but their eyes were red. Before entering the Rain Country, Jiraiya once said to Tadashi, who came with him, that as long as he couldn't defeat him, he would immediately use Sage Mode to escape. But looking at Pain standing opposite him now, the option of escape was directly ruled out by Jiraiya. Stopping such a dangerous child is also his duty as a teacher, isn't it? It's a pity, maybe the agreement between him and Tsunade can only be put aside like this. I didn't expect that in the end, my promise to Tsunade also became empty talk. Before Jiraiya could continue to regret, Pain, who was standing opposite Jiraiya, had already moved. No, it shouldn't be said that Pain moved, but a figure with the same orange hair and a face full of black iron rod decorations suddenly appeared beside Pain. Before Jiraiya had time to speak, the man, who was also wearing the Akatsuki's black robe with red clouds, had quickly printed hand signs. Summoning Jutsu. A voice slightly similar to Pain's voice came out from the man's mouth, and at the same time, 4 figures also appeared with the emergence of a large cloud of smoke. Jiraiya-sensei. Looking at Jiraiya, Pain slowly took a step forward and said to Jiraiya, "You are my most respected sensei, I originally wanted to let you live. But you gave up such an opportunity. Since things have come to this, I will use my strongest power to fight with you and give you the respect you deserve." Seemingly understanding Pain's meaning, the 5 people who suddenly appeared just now also stood behind Pain in unison. They were obviously 6 different individuals, but at this moment, they suddenly spoke in unison without the slightest difference. Pain Rikudo, join. Looking at these 6 figures with different faces and body shapes, Jiraiya felt the same aura from them. It seems that this so-called Pain Rikudo is actually an existence controlled by Nagato? After Jiraiya and Pain Rikudo looked at each other for a moment, they moved at the same time. Pain Rikudo has differences in body shape. As a veteran ninja, Jiraiya naturally quickly analyzed these 6 enemies. Although Jiraiya doesn't know the name of Pain Rikudo, for the sake of writing convenience, we will call them the Rikudo of Pain Rikudo below. Tendo Pain is the first Pain Rikudo to appear in front of Jiraiya, and it is also the Pain Rikudo created by Yahiko's body, who has the closest relationship with Nagato. Then, does it mean that the power possessed by Heaven's Way Pain is the most powerful in the 6 paths of pain? Therefore, from the beginning, Jiraiya excluded Tendo from his first target. Shirato is the most burly one in Pain Rikudo. Although a burly body does not necessarily mean that he is the main attacker, at least it can prove that such an existence has excellent physical fitness. Such a person is likely to be the main attacker in Pain Rikudo. So Jiraiya is still a little entangled whether to take the lead in eliminating such a person who seems to be the main attacker. Rendo's figure was relatively slimmer, but Jiraiya had no way to speculate the strength of such an enemy without fighting, so Jiraiya ruled out such an enemy as his attack target. Chikashoto, who has appeared once before, used summoning jutsu to summon the other Pain Rikudo. So, does it mean that Chikashoto is actually an existence who is proficient in summoning jutsu? If this is the case, then Jiraiya thinks that it is a good choice to exclude such a person who can use summoning jutsu. The remaining 2 6 paths of pain from Jigakudo and Gakido did not show their combat power. It was also impossible to judge their position in the 6 paths of pain from their appearance. Therefore, Jiraiya used the same reason to exclude the Mundo to exclude these 2 from the attack targets. Although it seems that Jiraiya made such a decision after a long period of judgment, in fact, Jiraiya did not dwell too much on the choice of such an attack target. Jiraiya, who has experienced countless battles with fewer enemies, is actually very clear that all his plans are based on subjective assumptions. Any subtle error in judgment will lead to the disclosure of his plan. Therefore, when fighting with many people, the most important thing is never the plan. It is to maintain your flexibility and physical strength, and perform the most appropriate attack at the most appropriate time. This is why Jiraiya has decided to fight to the death with Pain Rikudo, but he did not immediately summon Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin to cooperate with him to display his strongest power. Chapter 443. At the moment when Jiraiya began to move, Chikashodo of Pain's Rikudo also quickly printed in his hand. Similar to Jiraiya's speculation, Chikashodo still used the summoning jutsu that he had shown before. He pressed his hands on the ground, and runes quickly spread from the place where Chikashodo's hands pressed. Summoning jutsu. A loud shout sounded from Chikashodo's mouth, and a huge cloud of smoke instantly formed under Chikashodo. Generally speaking, the larger the size of the summoned beast summoned by summoning jutsu, the larger the smoke produced by summoning jutsu. Looking at the smoke that appeared after Chikashodo used summoning jutsu, it was not difficult to see that Chikashodo summoned a huge rare summon beast. A huge claw emerged from the smoke, waving the claw to cut the smoke around him, and the summon beast summoned by Chikashodo completely appeared in front of Jiraiya. Sure enough, a huge crab-shaped summon beast with a height of about 20 meters appeared in Jiraiya's sight. After summoning the summon beast, Chikashodo did not let the crab-shaped summon beast immediately rush up to attack Jiraiya. Instead, he quickly printed in his hand. He used his own chakra to mobilize the summon beast's chakra and let the summon beast perform ninjutsu. Water release, foam burst. Bubbles were spat out from the mouth of the crab-shaped summon beast. Pain really knew Jiraiya too well. When he was in the Rain Country, Pain and Jiraiya spent 3 years together. In the past 3 years, Pain has seen Jiraiya fight countless times, and he has also fought with Jiraiya's shadow clone many times. Although it has been so many years, a person's fighting habits are not so easy to change. During the battle, Jiraiya mainly used ninjutsu with his hair and the powerful fire release ninjutsu combined with the toad oil of Mount Myaboku. Knowing the enemy, Pain naturally knew that the first thing he should do now was to exclude the toad oil used when Jiraiya used fire release ninjutsu. His crab-shaped spiritual beast's chaotic foam burst was the best thing to do with toad oil. These bubbles formed by chakra were not ordinary bubbles. They could stay in the air for a very long time, enough to support a battle. After seeing Chikashodo summon such a summon beast, Jiraiya became more and more determined to deal with Chikashodo first. Facing the overwhelming amount of bubbles rushing towards him, Jiraiya quickly made hand seals. Spirit communication technique. Jiraiya's body floated up about 20 meters out of thin air. Jiraiya's body floated up about 20 meters out of thin air. A huge red toad holding 2 iron rods and carrying a pot lid-shaped shield on its back appeared under Jiraiya. Long time no see, Jiraiya. After Toad Ken appeared from the smoke, he didn't immediately observe the enemy he was about to face. Instead, he greeted Jiraiya. Toad Ken was one of the 3 members of the Toad clan in Mount Myaboku. The other 2 were Toad Hero who used 2 swords and Toad Gamuta who used a one-handed sword. Seeing Toad Ken greeting him, Jiraiya opened his mouth and wanted to say something to Toad Ken, but the bubbles all over the sky rushed towards Jiraiya's body at this moment. Jiraiya, who opened his mouth, was naturally directly filled with foam. Toad Ken, on the other hand, was very alert and placed the pot lid-shaped shield in front of him to protect himself. Toad Ken. You clearly saw the foam rushing over, why didn't you remind me? Jiraiya looked at his wet body, and then looked at Toad Ken, who was only stained with a little bit of foam because of his protection. Jiraiya couldn't help but complain. Toad Ken, on the other hand, opened his eyes, revealing a little doubt in his eyes. He seemed to be curious about why Jiraiya complained to him. Jiraiya saw Toad Ken's appearance, and he knew that with Toad Ken's dull temperament, there was no way for it to know that the reason why he complained to it just now was to make Pain and the others slightly lower their guard because of his performance. Forget it, it's a small matter. You don't have to think so much, what we have to do now is to defeat these enemies in front of us. Originally, Jiraiya was going to use a little trick to confuse Pain, but thinking about it carefully, with Pain's understanding of him, how could he be confused by such a small trick? So Jiraiya's face changed, and he no longer had any complaints. He seriously said to Toadaki. Toadaki. Toad Ken scratched his head with the barbed iron rod in his hand. He didn't seem to understand why Jiraiya's mood was so volatile. But then he threw such doubts to the back of his mind, because Chikishoto, who was standing opposite Toad Ken, began to summon a huge summon beast on a large scale. These summon beasts were in different postures, a dog, a centipede, a chameleon, and a buffalo. For summon beasts of the same size were all standing beside Chikishoto. Their eyes were red, and their emotions were restless. They seemed to be barely suppressing their impulse to attack. They were just waiting for Chikishoto's order to show their fangs and teeth to the enemy opposite them. Because I'm clumsy, I don't quite understand what you mean. But the people standing opposite us are our enemies, I'm very clear about this. Let these guys see the perseverance of Mount Mayaboku's Toad Ken. Looking at the summoning beast that was about the same size as him and looked extremely ferocious, Toad Jian didn't feel any fear at all. Instead, he tightly gripped his iron rod and pot-lid shield. His huge body leaped up high as he charged towards the summoning beast summoned by the animal path. Jiraiya jumped from the top of Toad Ken's head at the same time as Toad Ken jumped high, and his figure slowly retreated behind Toad Ken. Chapter 444. When Jiraiya saw that Chikishoto alone could summon so many huge summon beasts, he knew that he couldn't hide his strength anymore. Initially, he thought that he could use his ordinary form to cause a certain number of casualties to Six Paths of Pain and the others. However, the animal realm alone had already brought him so much pressure. If he let his guard down, he might die just like that. Such a situation was not what Jiraiya wanted to see, so Jiraiya decided to use the Sage Mode inherited from Mount Mayaboku that he didn't fully master, but he could use it as his trump card. At this moment, Jiraiya left the top of Toad Ken's head and hid his figure in the shadow of Toad Ken's huge figure. His two hands quickly formed hand seals, and the summoning technique was completed almost instantly. Two clouds of smoke were produced on Jiraiya's shoulders. Fukasaku Sennin and Shima Sennin, two very old toads, stood on Jiraiya's shoulders. Shima Sennin looked at Jiraiya who summoned her and asked softly, "Little Jiraiya, we thought you would hold on for a while before summoning us and let us help you use Sage Mode. We didn't expect you to summon us at the beginning of the battle. It seems that Rikudo Sennin's eyes really gave you a lot of pressure." Compared to Shima Sennin, who was like an old woman caring about Jiraiya's situation, Fukasaku Sennin was relatively more serious. His pair of toad eyes skipped over Pain Rikudo and Toad Ken who was fighting the huge summon beast summoned by Chikishoto, and said to his wife and Jiraiya with a dignified look in his eyes, "Well, now is not the time to admire the power of Rinnegan. No matter how powerful Rinnegan is, we only need to think about fighting it with all our strength. Old woman, cooperate with Jiraiya to cast the Sage Jutsu. Toad Ken can't hold on much longer." Almost just a glance, Fukasaku Sennin also quickly found that Toad Ken had fallen into a disadvantage, so he immediately said to Jiraiya and his wife Fukasaku Sennin. Looking at her husband's serious face, Shima Sennin looked at him and whispered softly, "You only know how to put on a stink face, you old man. If it weren't for the business now, see how I will teach you a lesson when we go back." But despite the complaints in her mouth, Shima Sennin and Fukasaku Sennin still stood on Jiraiya's shoulder. They put their palms together and continued to gather natural energy into Jiraiya's body. Jiraiya also closed his eyes gently and began to absorb the natural energy in the air. With the constant infusion of natural energy into his body, Jiraiya's figure slowly changed. Jiraiya's originally very loose clothes were now bulging due to his expanding body, and some toad features also appeared on his face. His nose became round and swollen, similar to the back of a toad, and the red mark on his face continued to extend, drawing lines similar to Toad's face. Of course, the most conspicuous feature was Jiraiya's orange eyes, which looked no different from the two sennin from Mount Myaboku on his shoulders. Jiraiya stimulated the senjutsu chakra that was constantly forming inside his body to strengthen his body. He directly jumped up from the ground and stood on the head of Toad Ken, who was struggling with the summoned beast summoned by Chikashoto. "Sorry, Toad Ken, I kept you waiting. Now is the time to fight back." Toad Ken also noticed Jiraiya's voice on top of his head, so he looked at Jiraiya with a little doubt. Toad Ken said, "Jiraiya, when did you leave my head? I didn't feel it, I was just fighting these beasts." As he spoke, Toad Jian suddenly sensed the aura of the two toad immortals from Mount Myabu. He waved the two iron rods in his hands and sandwiched the front of the split dog's body, firmly blocking it. Finally, he spoke with a hint of understanding. "I didn't expect you to invite these two over. Sorry, two sennin, please forgive Toad Ken for not being able to greet you at the moment." Hearing Toad Ken's words, Shima Sennin nodded happily, then said to Toad Ken, "It's okay, Ken. Just fight well, I've seen how hard you fought just now." Shima Sennin and Fukasaku Sennin status in Mount Myaboku is only lower than the Great Toad Sennin, who has been sleeping under normal circumstances. They are usually the people with the highest status in Mount Myaboku, Toad. To be able to hear the praise from such a person, even the slightly wooden tenacious Toad felt his entire body brimming with energy. He didn't know where he got the strength from, but he directly hit the split dog with the iron rods in his hands. The split dog was directly hit to the side by Toad Ken. Whoa! The split dog didn't seem to have intelligence. After being attacked like this, it didn't have any intention of retreating, instead, it continued to rush toward Toad Ken. Sometimes, it's not a good thing for a summoned beast to be too big. Just like now, Chikashoto summoned 5 huge summon beasts, but because of the limitation of size and lack of intelligence, these 5 huge summon beasts can't form an effective attack. This is also the important reason why Toad Ken can hold on for so long in the hands of 5 summon beasts that are not inferior to his own size. Looking at the bubbles all over the ground, Jiraiya naturally felt that this is a bit too disadvantageous for him, so he gave Toad Ken a look, and his hands began to quickly form hand seals. Toad Jian, on the other hand, displayed his extraordinary jumping ability as he leapt up from the ground. His mouth was bulging as if he was storing something. Sennin, Katan, Toad Oil Bomb. Jiraiya, Fukasaku Sennin, and Shima Sennin shouted the name of their ninjutsu, and Toad Ken also spat out the toad oil in his mouth. Jiraiya put his hand in front of his mouth and blew a huge flame from Jiraiya's mouth to the toad oil spat out by Toad Ken. The flame mixed with Sennin chakra wasn't the common orange flame. Instead, it had a little white luster, which was quite sacred and hot. The flame all over the sky rushed toward the 5 huge summon beasts on the ground, Pain Rikudo, and the bubbles all over the ground. Chapter 445. The white flame burning with the toad oil sprinkled down from the sky. Looking at the white flame that obviously had unusual power, Pain Rikudo also reacted quickly. Chikashoto commanded the 5 huge summon beasts he summoned to surround Pain Rikudo, using their huge bodies to form a thick meat shield. After commanding his summon beasts to form a meat wall, Chikashoto immediately stood together with the other 5 Rikudo clones. Gakito's clone seemed to have received some instructions and walked out of the crowd. He opened his hands and kept staring at the seemingly weak part of the meat wall surrounded by the 5 summon beasts. He was always on guard against the invasion of the defensive flame and then used his power to absorb the flame. The overwhelming white flame fell on the ground, and countless bubbles were quickly evaporated under the high temperature. The meat wall formed by the 5 huge summon beasts also suffered more flame attacks under the deliberate attention of Jiraiya and Toad Ken. The raging flame burned for nearly 5 minutes. Although the huge summon beasts summoned by Chikashoto lost their wisdom due to the forced control of Rinnegan, their bodies were still flesh and blood. After being burned by the blazing flame, the breath of the 5 summon beasts had become extremely weak. Black traces of carbonization due to the high temperature even appeared on their bodies. When the last flame was extinguished, the 5 summon beasts all turned into white smoke and disappeared. Pain Rikudo, who was wrapped in the body of the 5 summon beasts for protection, also appeared in front of Jiraiya. Pain Rikudo didn't seem to expect that the power of ninjutsu mixed with senjutsu chakra would be so great. The toad oil flame bomb with certain liquid characteristics leaked through the gap of the summon beast wall. Gakido tried his best to absorb the white flames with his ability, but he still couldn't do anything. At this moment, except for Tendo Pain, who can use repulsive and gravitational ninjutsu, and Rendo, who is agile and good at close combat, there are no burn marks on their bodies. The other 4 Rikudo doppelgangers have some burn marks on their bodies. Among them, Chikashoto and Shirato were the most affected. After all, Chikashoto was a summoner who accumulated a lot of chakra to summon beasts, while Shirato was a heavy shooter unit responsible for various long-range attacks. These 2 Rikudo clones suffered more damage because of their positioning. Pain Rikudo had the ability to repair the other Rikudo clones, but the high-intensity battle made it difficult for Jigoko to use its summoning jutsu, Yama, to repair the other Rikudo clones. Now that he saw that 2 of his 6 doppelgangers had suffered a certain degree of damage, the Naraka realm thought that he should find an opportunity to release King Yama to repair the damaged doppelgangers. But Jiraiya didn't give Jigoko, or Pain Rikudo, such an opportunity. After entering Sage Mode, Jiraiya's physical fitness and other aspects have made great progress. Coupled with Senjutsu chakra and fire release, Jiraiya was like a tiger with wings. Take advantage of the enemy's weakness. Such a sentence was not just a saying, it was a good strategy to defeat the enemy. Gamaken, you can go back and rest first, I will continue the battle. Jiraiya looked at Gamaken, who was standing next to him with large and small wounds on his body, and said to Gamaken. Large summon beasts are of great benefit in large-scale battles or summon beast battles, but in small-scale battles, large summon beasts' bloated body size and relatively less agile physical reactions are a shortcoming. Gamaken has completed the task of buying time for Jiraiya to enter Sage Mode, so Jiraiya naturally didn't mind letting Gamaken go back and rest. After hearing Jiraiya's words, Gamaken didn't say much, just nodded, and his body turned into a cloud of smoke and drifted in the air. Naturally, Jiraiya was also shrouded in the smoke when Toad Ken disappeared. When the smoke dissipated, Jiraiya's figure quietly disappeared from his original position. Jiraiya's Kage level strength is not out of thin air, but through battle after battle. At this moment, Jiraiya is using Mount Miyaboku's Sage Mode, plus 2 Gamaken Sennin's assistance. Jiraiya has actually completely surpassed the conventional Kage level. If such a level must be named, perhaps Super Kage level is the correct name, right? Although the 6 paths of pain here have their own strengths, they also have various weaknesses at that time. Gendo and Gakido lack long-range attacks, Shirato and Chikashoto lack defensive abilities, and Jigakudo itself is more of an auxiliary role. Even the most powerful Tendo Pain's Shinra Tensei and Bansho Tensei have great limitations. Once the opportunity is seized, it is not impossible to eliminate it. So at this moment, Jiraiya and 6 Paths Pain were actually on par with each other, but once Jiraiya's immature Sage Mode couldn't persist, then this balance would immediately be broken. The judgment of the outcome of this battle is actually so simple. As long as Jiraiya can defeat Pain in a limited time, then Jiraiya will win. And as long as pain can persist through the explosive period of Jiraiya's strength, then Jiraiya will be easily defeated by pain after that. A battle was a race against time. 6 paths of pain's doppelgangers formed a circle, all of them watching their surroundings vigilantly, alert to Jiraiya, who has disappeared, at any time to launch an attack. Seeing such a scene, Pain actually regretted it a little. Because to be honest, even if 6 paths of Pain's doppelgangers has the strongest perception ability, it is actually only at an ordinary level. At this moment, Jiraiya has almost integrated with the entire environment because of the natural energy in his body. In such a case, it is difficult to find Jiraiya's trace just by relying on Gendo. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.